Okay, just getting ready to start here. Anyone that's here in the chat, just about ready to start for a new roundtable.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own Palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower, came.
We are Ka-Tet, one from many. The Palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for roundtable number 46.
All right.
Almost at 36.
Almost. That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was. It feels like it's been a while, though. We're back to the old thing where we found that book clubs tend to make us feel like we haven't recorded in a while, even though we have for book clubs. But yeah, we're back here for roundtable number 46, streaming live on YouTube. And I think we may have someone else in the chat other than Peter, but we will see as we go. And we didn't really have a lot of advance notice on this one. We apologize for that for anyone that normally would listen in. Me and Peter, we were out doing some recreating before the weather betrays us and turns on us and turns cold. And we didn't really know how long that would go, so we kind of just were playing it by ear. So this one's a little bit of a pop-up recording for sure.
Surprise!
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the intro, all the intro stuff first, and we will get into our 46th roundtable. First off, I want to warn you guys about spoilers. If you guys have not read the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, you may want to cry off this podcast. We will potentially spoil freely of the 7 primary books. That does also include into the side stories, comic books, or short stories as well. But generally, the 7 primary books are the one that people are generally a little bit more concerned about. Or, I guess, spin-off book and full book, too, for...
Yeah.
Went through the keyhole. Also, you guys can find us on services such as iTunes and Stitcher. Pretty much any podcasting service we should be available on. If you could be so kind as to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, we would definitely appreciate that. And also, you can find the show notes for today's episode on darktowerpalaver.com. All of the articles that I will be covering here with Peter will be there, as well as any visuals that we might have will all be shown there. So if you're just listening in the standard sense and not watching on YouTube, that is the best way to find out what are we talking about. So go ahead and find that at darktowerpalaver.com. Also, we are a larger Ka-Tet, and as such, we want you guys to be involved with the Palavers. And Peter, tell us how that happens.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And then if you want to interact with us directly, you can also follow us on Twitter and tweet us. It's at DarkTowerPod. That's at DarkTowerPod. Then, like Tad said, we're live on YouTube. It's youtube.com/DarkTowerPalaver. If you want to follow along with any visuals that Tad shows me or articles or anything like that, you can follow us there or watch it live while we're recording.
Yeah, and you can also find on our YouTube channel, all of the live shows will be also on there as videos to watch at a later time if you want to do that. I will warn you, though, I actually just got an email about this recently. Our book clubs are pretty much going to be exclusive, it sounds like, to the podcast service.
Yeah.
Well, no, and even just that, because YouTube actually shut us down on that video because copyright. Because
we had clips.
Because of the audio clips.
Yep.
So, if you're into the YouTube thing, you're going to have to subscribe to us on our normal thing to do book clubs, because it took some time to upload. We don't normally do non-live stuff, but for the book clubs we were going to. and it took a lot more time to upload, and there's no sense doing that if they're just going to shut us down for audio clips. So for book clubs, you'll find that exclusively on our podcast service, as noted above, found on iTunes or any podcast service, or Stitcher if you wanted to stream things. So now we're going to jump over to news and all that fun stuff. There's definitely a lot to talk about. It's been a while since we talked news, and we're kind of out of the wake of the Dark Tower theatrical release now for the most part. So we started to see a little bit more news rather than just reviews of the movie. Now we're starting to see actual reviews or actual like news articles. I will also warn that a good chunk of these are kind of looking back on the Dark Tower, most of them obviously looking in the sense of, you know, what went wrong here, especially in the wake of It, which is now at this point probably I think it's the most successful rated R movie of all time.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, it's been a monster hit, which I don't think that if you've been listening for any period of time, I think we've been predicting that here, because there was just something about It that just seemed like lightning in a bottle. So
yeah.
Now, so you're just going to see a lot of comparisons between like Dark Tower a month earlier. Why did that one fail versus It being good? So we're going to get into a lot of that kind of stuff. But for first up, I wanted to get into a mainstay we've had recently, but this is actually going to be the last one, because as of now, I do believe the theatrical run has completely ended for Dark Tower. We'll be getting into the home video release here shortly as well. But yeah, but this is the final one. I think it's pretty much closed up in the box offices. No, at least in the United States, but also internationally, I believe it's now everything's moved over to newer movies. So the sequel watch is basically our look at the numbers, and so here we're gonna look at the numbers and see kind of where Dark Tower settled. Once the dust is settled now, see where Dark Tower sits financially. First of all, we want to talk about domestic numbers. So the final number for what it made in the United States is $50.6 million. So definitely short of the $66 million that they cost. I mean, about $16 million short, including, but that doesn't count obviously like theater takes and stuff like that. But so yeah, definitely not necessarily a huge success for the numbers that we were looking at. But the foreign box office is where the salvation may come. With that, we have $60.8 million. So that puts it at a grand total of $111.4 million for the Dark Tower as a take for box office.
All right.
So that's kind of the final. And also, it was funny. The other thing that we've been doing, if you've been listening since the movie came out, you've known this, is where does it rank with the Stephen King film universe? And it's actually funny because last time we did this, I think it was right before It came out, and we were talking that, you know, It was probably going to sweep all the way to the top of the list, and no doubt it did. And it's funny because where we were at last time, Dark Tower basically dropped a single spot in both spaces. So domestically at 50.6, Dark Tower is now ranked the 7th Stephen King film of all time for domestic box office. And worldwide, so domestic and international, Dark Tower at $111.4 million is now ranked 4th, whereas it was before ranked 3rd for King film of all time. And then just to give some context here, Green Mile, we had been talking about being the champion. So domestically, it had made $136 million, and that was the highest grossing of all time. And internationally, it had done $286 million. Well, in comes It, and I just, for a comparison of what the new champion looks like, it basically, domestically, it beat what Green Mile had done internationally. It made $295 million.
Good Lord.
To this point. It's not done yet. And $573.8 million worldwide.
Wow.
So there's actually a lot of people talking. A lot of people are talking that this might actually be the very first rated R movie / horror movie to ever make $1 billion. And I don't see that being far from the truth, because we're not that many weeks removed from the opening. Yeah. So for it to already have $500 million in a worldwide box office, this might be the first $1 billion horror movie.
That would be amazing.
So, wow, definitely a big one.
We got a question in the chat. Says, where does Gerald's Game land on that list?
That one is since it's a Netflix thing, there is no money involved.
There's
necessarily.
no box
office. And Netflix is famously secretive about their numbers. They don't necessarily release like ratings or how many people subscribe, or they're very closed in with that kind of stuff. But so it's no way of knowing how that did. I will admit I have not seen it yet. We got some tweets last week, and I actually didn't realize that it had come out last week. And I text Peter, and he actually ended up watching it. But
I did.
The weekend got away from me. So what do you think is one that's watched it then?
It was really good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the book. I read the book earlier this year or last year. I can't remember which. And I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It was one that I loved reading an article after I read the book where it said it was unfilmable. And then one of the people they talked to who said it was unfilmable was directly involved with making it.
Yeah.
So it was actually a really good movie. It made changes where changes were needed, but it surprisingly kept in a core element of the story that I did not think would
Didn't
make
think
it.
they would do.
No, it just seemed like it was too much of a, oh, that's too dark. They're not going to put that in or anything like that. But they actually kept it in, and it really surprised me. I need to go back and read the book again now so I can reevaluate the book. I can't remember much about the book except for a couple parts that kind of haunted me because it's a terrifying tale. It really is. So
yeah,
for those of you, let me explain because this is a Dark Tower podcast. For those of you that don't know, this is a middle-aged woman, late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah, not middle-aged, 30s or 40s.
30s or 40s.
Yeah.
Husband's a little bit older than her. He would be middle-aged, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
And they never had kids. Their marriage is struggling. So they decided to go up to a family cabin on a lake and everything and decide to do a bondage fantasy. So she gets handcuffed to the bed and she doesn't end up liking it. And her husband ends up having a heart attack and she has to struggle with escaping as well as her own psyche. She's got a couple traumatizing things in her past and she has to come to grips with a lot of issues from her past or her childhood and everything.
So do they do that in a good way? Because like mental stuff is obviously a tough to.
They actually did it really well to where in the book, if I remember right, and again, I'm sorry, I don't remember this part of the book. I cannot remember. It was she had two different versions of herself, like a weak version of herself and a strong version of herself talking to her in her head. And they actually what they did is they replaced the weak one with her husband.
Okay.
So they kept her husband in the movie besides just being in that 5 minutes and then dying.
Yeah.
So they actually kept like a mental image of him. It was actually really interesting because a lot of the stuff, like I was talking about, she was traumatized as a child with some stuff. It was really interesting that she never told him, so they actually portrayed him like being shocked about learning stuff.
Okay.
So it was actually really well done.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm hoping to watch it this weekend, but there's definitely a few more movies that have come out too. It's like one of those things, I just don't have enough hours in my weekends, man.
Oh, Jim wants to know what we thought of it. Jim from Rhode Island.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really, really good.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen it twice now. Me and Peter went with some friends from work, including some people that were scared of clowns, which is definitely fun. And I also went with my mom, which is a huge Stephen King fan. So yeah, it was pretty fun. And my mom, I think we went last weekend, which was a ways into the run a little bit. And that was actually a pretty full movie theater for.
You said it was fuller than the first time we went.
Yeah,
which blew my mind because we saw it on opening weekend.
Yeah,
and then you went with your mom a few weeks later. But the only thing that got me thinking is I was like right around October, so I really wonder if it is going to hold.
It's going to have a resurgence.
Yeah, it's going to hold up there and all through October.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. I thought it was really well done and just brilliantly executed. I think the children did a really great job acting in those roles. Skarsgård did a great job as Pennywise. The adults are super creepy. One of my favorite moments, actually a really small thing, but it was in the library. Ben's in the library reading a book, and right when he opens a book, this like freaking creepy lady in the background just like stops what she's doing and stares at him with like this really like horrific smile on her face. And it's weird because it's not in focus, so it's not like, it doesn't
draw your attention.
Yeah, it doesn't cut to her. It doesn't it doesn't even like put him into like out of focus and put her in focus. Like it doesn't do anything to draw attention to it. It's like kind of just like a weird background thing that's going on, but it's really freaky. And like, I just love that kind of stuff because it's just like, that's so abnormal. And it's just, like I said, it's creepy as hell. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. What about you?
Oh, it was fantastic. I loved the mixture of childhood whimsical nature that they added to the film with like the jokes and the voices for Richie and everything like that, and just everything about that. But then Skarsgård was terrifying.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah, he was. The best part about him is that he definitely made Pennywise different from Tim Curry's. because that's one thing I always worry about that when someone has to redo a role that's been done, especially in a remake like this.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I was worried about, is that he would do too much like Tim Curry, who dulled down Pennywise a lot for the TV aspect of it. And I was worried they were going to kind of, take it easy on Pennywise and everything. Wait till the adults to go full. Dude, this one, he held nothing back. Like, I understand why some of the kids had nightmares about him and everything. Like, they were terrified of him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really well done. He definitely goes pretty extreme at times. And I can only imagine those kids must have had a lot of fun filming some of those scenes with him. But yeah, I think they did a good job. I think like Peter said, that like the childhood element was like really well done. I think I think a lot of people are surprised that they walked out saying that was a funny movie. Like,
I have a lot of people telling me that they laughed more than they were scared.
Yeah.
Like, there was good scary moments, but the fact that they had enough funny moments, kid moments, that made them, laugh, that it surprised a lot of people with that was the thing I was telling my wife about it, who refuses to see it because it's a clown movie and she's terrified of clowns, is that if I could just take the edit of everything, just the comedy, it'd be one of the best comedies ever made.
Yeah.
It was just so funny.
Yeah, it was great. Of course, Richie was great, and Eddie was probably. Those are the two that probably stole the movie.
Yeah,
is for sure.
I actually think that they those two really overpowered Bill. The kid that played Bill. They just overpowered him with how confident they were in those roles and how well they played them.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the kid that was playing, I don't know. Yeah, they feels like they were more in the skin of it for sure.
Yeah.
But for Bill, I think that like the character calls for him to be a little bit more like subdued.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could maybe even be confused as not as busting out of the role. But he's actually in the role, but the role requires him to be a little bit more muted.
Yeah.
Which
obviously he's not Richie Tozier.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And then also a little bit further back, I see. Let's see. Motor Cop says, "How can we qualify like Gerald's game?" I really don't know on that, like how to compare it. Like it's going to be honestly like an apples and oranges type thing. Just like 11/22/63 is the same way. I mean, I know that's a mini series and it's longer and stuff, but there's really going to be no way to compare that to anything else. Like it's like we're gonna like theatrical stuff's always going to have a lot more measurables.
It's also going to be interesting how we compare if it's still going forward, the Dark Tower TV show.
Yeah, I would say the one thing you could qualify it is critical response, and I would say that overall, I haven't done a lot of deep digging on Gerald's game, but I'd say that so far, most of what I've read is fairly positive.
Yeah, I've seen some down. It dragged. It was too slow. It didn't have enough excitement in it. Not enough action. But it's definitely not supposed to have action. I mean, this entire book is based off of a woman chained to a bed.
Yeah.
It's not going to have gunfights or sword fights or, action in it. I mean, this is a psychological thriller. This is definitely very in the same veins of like a Silence of the Lambs type thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology involved in this movie.
Yeah. So I don't think you can necessarily compare any kind of numbers, but yeah, we could definitely look at the critical reception. And I've definitely even seen some things that were, even just tweets, offhanded tweets saying that like Gerald's Game and It are, the right ways to do Stephen King stuff versus per se like Dark Tower for people that weren't as welcoming to what Dark Tower did with the movie. So yeah, that's I guess some reaction to It and Gerald's Game from Peter, at least for the Gerald's Game part, a little bit unplanned, but yeah, it's definitely something that we could talk about. I guess it's everything. It's just like it feels like it's almost a golden age of Stephen King. Mr. Mercedes is one I would love more than anything to watch right now, but I don't have cable or satellite, let alone DirecTV, so I can't watch it. I'm hoping that they'll put it out on Blu-ray at some point and I can watch it down the way. But I've definitely heard some good things about that one as well, but definitely have no access to it.
Gerald's Game currently right now ranks a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, so I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty well received.
I think if you went back and looked at Stephen King's entire filmography, you would probably find a lot of bad movies. There's been a lot of bad Stephen King adaptations over the years. Like for every one, like The Shining, I think you probably got at least 3 that are like just like really like bad, shitty movies.
And the thing is that I mean, even with the bad movies, I enjoyed a lot of them. Like I enjoyed Rose Red, and that one was not critically acclaimed. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was a miniseries, though.
I'm talking even some of outside that was a miniseries in like the late 90s, I think it was what it was, because I remember when that one came out.
Yeah.
I want to say we may have even known each other then, because I think it was right around
you
the
had
time
me watch it.
Yeah,
that's the only reason I watched it is because it was after I got into Stephen King.
I was going to say,
I
think we were in our first job then, so yeah, that was early 2000s even. So,
but see, going back to what we talked about with like Dark Tower and everything, the tomato meter is 90%, but the audience score is 79%. For Gerald's game.
Yeah.
So
which
there's the difference.
Which is generally going to happen for sure. And also the way that Rotten Tomatoes weighs things is a little bit different. But yeah, that's definitely something to consider as critical reception. Also, Motor Cop also says, what is Mr. Mercedes on? Mr. Mercedes is on the Audience Network, which is an exclusive channel for DirecTV people. I know that, like, for instance, there's some like DirecTV programming that goes straight on there.
It's a DirecTV exclusive channel.
Yeah.
So it's not even available on like Comcast, or we have CenturyLink here in Salt Lake, Utah, that has satellite Dish Network, or any of those ones don't have it. It's definitely an exclusive channel only to DirecTV. It's kind of like almost like just like a regular channel, but like what they do with the NFL Sunday Ticket. You can't get that on Comcast. You have to have DirecTV to get that.
Yeah.
So I just can't remember what channel it was.
Yeah, it's the Audience Network is what it's called.
Audience Network. Yeah.
Audience Network's the name of the channel. Like I know that like like one of the sports shows I watch, they're under like they're over the radio normally, but they also have like their whole thing is like it's a radio show that's on TV, so they have video going on during the whole course of their show, and it's DirecTV that actually puts them on the air, and so it's on the Audience Network as well. So when they announced the Audience Network, I was already somewhat familiar with it, but it was like one of those things where I was like, oh shit, you have to have DirecTV for that, which kind of sucks. And I was actually hoping that you'd maybe be able to buy like season passes or something for it, but no go on that. So hopefully Blu-ray at some point, down the way. I think at some point, if there's no Blu-rays, I might have to start thinking about the high seas, even though I'm not really into that kind of thing. I definitely would try never to do that kind of stuff, but I think within reason, though, like if it comes to a point where
we gotta watch it,
yeah, if like a year from now there's like no indication that it'll ever be on Blu-ray, then I would probably have to like
and they're doing multiple seasons of it too for the first book.
For the other books. Yeah,
no, for the first book.
I thought they
did. They say that it was.
No, I think it was gonna. I think it was probably gonna be like 3 seasons for the 3 books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so kind of sucks, but yeah, that's definitely one. And Motor Cop also mentions the lead actress for Gerald's Game. Do you have anything to speak on for that?
She was fantastic. She really was, and she's very pretty.
Yeah,
very pretty.
Good, did a good job though.
She was.
That's a tough task for an actor.
Yeah, because like I said, there was in the book. There's if I remember right, there's 2 alternate like alter egos. There's the weak and the really strong, powerful woman kind of thing. So what they did is they replaced one of them, so they still have one. So you have conversations between her chained up on the bed and her powerful self, like walking around the bed trying to get her to see how to get out of it. Because that's the thing with Gerald's Game, is it's not like there's an alter ego that's like, Tad, if you want to get out, pick up the handcuff key. And then, it's like, no, you need to remember, you need to think, you need to do this and everything like that. So it's really interesting to see how her psyche kind of worked.
Okay. Yeah, that's so that's definitely some of the new Stephen King stuff, as well as I guess It and Gerald's Game are the big ones. Mr. Mercedes a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of what's in the Stephen King universe as of right now. Sitting here at early October, I guess we are now.
Yeah.
So still feels like September for some reason. So now we'll get on over to some more news articles here. And the first one here is Idris Elba reacts to Dark Tower haters and confirms that he hugged Stephen King. And this is from Nikolay Nikolov from Mashable, and this is published on September 11th, 2017. And let's see here. I guess if you're new to the program, I basically just take some snippets from the articles. I don't take the whole articles, and that's why if you want to go to the show notes and look at the whole articles, you can do that and read them, because a lot of times there's a lot of other cool stuff, and I just don't get into them because I try to keep it as centered on the Dark Tower as possible. So here's my first note from this one, and it says, when it comes to the Dark Tower, Idris Elba wants you to know that, no, he doesn't care if you hated the movie. And this is a quote from Idris. He says, ultimately, everyone has an opinion, and that's okay, explains the actor. But his live and let live mentality about the film reviews does not come without a grain of salt, or with a grain of salt. He says, I'd imagine that a film like The Dark Tower If you know anything about literature, is a very hard book to digest. It's definitely a hard book to adapt, says Elba, until one of the reviewers that had something to say adapts it and does a great job. Well, I don't want to hear what they have to say. So, and that's kind of what I had done a little bit. Like, I mean, I'm mostly pulled out of a lot of the subreddit for the most part for Dark Tower, just because I'm not really keen on a lot of the hate they're throwing on the movie. I don't think it necessarily justifies the way they're treating it, and it just gets repetitive and not interesting. So I haven't really done it a lot, but a little bit of the engaging I've done there is I've just asked people, okay, well, outline it for me. You know, give me a fairly detailed outline of how the movie would play out if it was done the way you think it would be good, and let's see if that would actually be, you know, a good movie.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like just a good Dark Tower adaptation, but like a good movie, one that, you know, people of any ilk could walk in and watch and enjoy, and it just don't get a lot of answers for that. But,
yeah, it's a lot of criticism, but not a lot of well, here's how I would have actually preferred it to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's one of the things with our friendship that I've learned over the years with you is that, yeah, Tad's absolutely able to listen to criticism and everything like that, but if it comes down to someone that's just hating for hate, that's where we're both of us now draw the line, is that if you can give me a reason and you can say, I didn't like it for a reason, I would have liked it if it had done B instead. Okay, well, then we can have an intelligent conversation about your views. Yeah. But if you're just oh no, it was garbage. Why? It just sucked.
Or it just sucked. Yeah, like, and it's like something that never gets beyond skin deep for a review. Like, I can't get behind that because it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't feel super. I don't know. It's not thought out, and in some cases, there's times I talk to people when they act like that. I'm just like, in my mind, sometimes I wonder, did you even watch the movie? Or are you just like, you have a preconceived notion? No, I'm not saying that about Dark Tower people. I'm saying when I talk to people that have like that mannerism that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
With like, you know, oh, it just sucked and I just hated it. And like, you can never get any details out of them. It's just like, there's part of you where you're like.
Okay, so why? You can't get a why out of them.
Yeah.
And we had this with, there was a movie this year that was like that. I can't remember who it was, but someone didn't like one of the movies that we went and saw. It wasn't Dark Tower, it was something else. And we started asking him, like, what didn't you like about it? And he's just like, oh, I just didn't like it. It's like, okay, but did you watch the movie?
Yeah.
Like if you're not going to be able to tell me why you didn't like something, like, I mean, if I eat a sandwich and I don't like it, okay, well, I'm going to be able to tell you why. Okay, it has tomatoes on it. I don't like tomatoes.
Yeah.
You know, that's my thing. I'm going to be able to tell you why. I just don't get people that are just like, no, it just sucked.
Yeah.
It just sucked.
Yeah. But I guess maybe people aren't as like, I don't know. I don't want to say critical, but like maybe not as analytical. But I don't know. There at least should be something like.
Oh, who was the fan that we had last month that was critical of the film and was worried that we were going to be all mad at him for the review.
I can't remember.
It's like we talked about after we read that review by that fan. That person had reasons.
Yeah,
they had put some thought behind it, and that's what we've said before.
And that's all I asked.
That's all we asked.
Yeah, that's like, and I mean, you could have like just a straight up, I just don't like it opinion. I would just say that you're probably not going to get the friendliest response here. I mean, we'll always try to be friendly for sure.
Yeah,
but we're not going to necessarily like. There's no way to empathize with you if it's just a straight up, I just hated it, and there's no reasons behind it. Like I guess that's what it is. There'd be very little empathy for that, because like how can we, like, whatever, because like even a lot of the criticism, I enjoyed the movie, we both did, but I could definitely see where some of the complaints came from people, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but like, and I can totally see it, and I can totally see where there's even times I look at it and go, you know, especially now after a little bit of time, where I'm just like, oh man, I wish it would have had X, Y, or Z, you know,
right.
Or I wish it would have done this, or even in the light of It, which we're going to get to. We have an article that actually kind of does some like side by side with It and Dark Tower, and you know, it makes me wonder, you know, what could have been in some ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into that. But then it goes on here. Elba also says that he got to hang out with Stephen King and confirmed his involvement with the upcoming TV series based on the book. And then this is Elba. He says he's very cool. He needs a hug. Elba laughs. He's incredible. One of the most prolific authors of our generation. And I think most of us would agree with that for sure. And I would also say, as just a side tangent, one of these articles with Elba goes really in depth, and I didn't do it for the sake of this podcast, but goes in depth that he actually is part of a organization about basically ending illiteracy within a certain period of time. So like literature and like reading is a huge deal for him. Like, you know, everyone kind of has their, whatever, whether it's Bob Barker back in the day when it's like, oh, he's spay and neuter your pets or whatever. People have like these things they believe in. One of the things he's heavily involved in is ending illiteracy and just pushing literacy amongst adults and children. So if you hear kind of throughout these, and anything with Idris Elba, if you hear some of these things that kind of feel like he's always talking about literature, that's probably why. Then the last quote I have from him for this article, he says, "Yeah, I don't actually know and this is, they asked him about the future of the Dark Tower series, and as he says, yeah, I don't actually know, if I'm really honest. I do know about the TV series, and I'm not sure where we are with that. But I could tell you what's going, but I couldn't tell you what's happening, what's going to happen next. As you know, the film was sort of mixed reviews. Some loved it, and some I think hated it. So who knows?" So that's kind of where like a lot of the headlines came from this interview is that he doesn't really know where the future of the franchise is or what might come. So was a lot of the headlines. But it makes sense though. It's early in development for the TV series and stuff, but hopefully we'll know more as time goes by. Yeah, with what's going on there. And even I will at least tease, not that we're in radio and need people hopefully that aren't checking out with us, but hopefully the tease, we got a little tease though, is that I will say we have a little bit more to talk about from Idris that happens a little bit later, because this is September 11th, and I think that there's something closer to today's date that he gets interviewed again. He's doing a lot of publicity for that Mountain Between Us or whatever. Yeah, Mountain Lies Between Us or something like that. He and Kate Blanchett, right? I think so. Yeah, so we got that movie coming out, Idris. You also have Thor upcoming. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get a lot of Idris in publicity type things. So hopefully we'll have a lot to hear from here over the next, we already have, but hopefully even over the next 27-ish days until Thor comes up, we'll get some more. So maybe if some stuff develops, we'll get some more from him. So that'll be pretty cool. All right, next up, we're going to jump over to the next article here. And this one, the headline doesn't necessarily sound a lot like Dark Tower, but you can obviously see why we're talking about it, and there's a little nugget in here, and it is Dr. Foster star Tom Taylor, and this is a quote, "It's even stressful for us to watch, and we've filmed it." So this is about the Dr. Foster show that he's on. I believe that's a British show, and but they have a little bit that talks into Dark Tower a little bit, so I wanted to cover that. And it's written by Jessica Barrett from iNews on September 13th, 2017. And I'll just skip straight to the Dark Tower relevant stuff. And it says Taylor was cast as Jake Chambers following a worldwide search for the young actor to star alongside Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. And I do believe we pretty much knew that, and we have covered that it was a worldwide search, and they did a lot of screening. I don't know, they did a lot of casting work behind it. So that's nothing new necessarily, but there is some new information here. And this is actually a quote from Tom. He says, "I did 8 auditions. I got flown to LA to meet Idris Elba and the director. I kind of thought, what the hell am I doing at this point?" He remembers. So that's actually, I think, news. So 8 auditions. That's quite a bit, isn't it? Yeah, that is a lot. Not to mention flying to LA to do probably some sort of chemistry feel between he and Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. So that's definitely interesting though. 8 auditions. That's definitely not normal for sure. Then he goes on here, and this is another quote from him, and it says, "I heard they looked through a lot of different people, and at one point I think they were going to go to do a street casting in New York. So the fact that I got it was even more amazing. It's a huge deal. They picked an English actor." So, that's I guess that's something that none of us can necessarily take for granted, that Tom did a great job. I think he looked the part fairly well, and it is something to be considered that he was a British actor to be brought in to play a New York kid versus like an Edward Furlong Terminator 2 that was just picked out of a mall and said, "Hey, do you want to be in a movie?" Street castings type stuff definitely happens. So. And then a little bit further here, we have some cool information. It says Oscar winner McConaughey played Walter, the Man in Black, in the Dark Tower. A villain, quote, worse than the devil. Probably taken straight from the trailer there, it looks like, because that's a line that was pretty heavy in the trailer. And it's true. I suppose, if you think so. If you want to malign the good name of Randall Flagg. Then it goes on here. Name. And it goes on here and says Taylor's first meeting with the Dallas Buyers Club star was, quote, just surreal. And then this is a quote from Tom. He says, "When I first met Matthew, he invited me to his trailer. He was very much in his character because he was playing an evil character, so he had to stay in the zone," says Taylor. They had a chance to chat properly many times during the 4-month shoot in South Africa, during which McConaughey gave Taylor plenty of pearls of thespian wisdom.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. And I think we had kind of even speculated on that, whether how much he would learn from Matthew or Idris, side by side with two really great actors. And then the last little bit from this here, it's a quote from Tom. It says, he told me how he prepares for roles and how he gets his best performances, Taylor said. It wasn't method acting, but he just had to stay in the zone. Idris Elba, who plays Roland the Last Gunslinger, became close to Taylor as they filmed, and the pair still exchanges messages and the odd FaceTime call now and then.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And then a quote here. It says, Idris is a good man. And this is from Tom, obviously. Idris is a good man. At the end of the day, they're both just normal people. There's nothing superhuman about them. So that's, I guess, I think that's even something that we would all take for granted. I think most of us, especially as you become an adult, you kind of realize, like, yeah, all these actors, like, they're no different than anyone else. They're just human beings. But it's funny is, like, from a kid where it's just like, especially if you're an actor, then to look up at some of these great actors and, then to work alongside them, you suddenly realize, like, oh yeah, they're just normal people. But yeah, it's a realization to come to versus something that you already kind of know inherently. So that's kind of cool, kind of a cool thing there. And Dr. Foster, I have actually considered looking into that. And some of the stuff I read while preparing for this, I'm not really even sure what it is, but I think that it's kind of an intense show. I mean, even the headline there, it's even stressful for us to watch it. We filmed it. Quote from Tom. So it's like, I don't know what kind of show it is. I don't know if it's like a thriller, psychological thriller. I don't know what it is, but I may have to look into it because it sounds like Tom's doing a lot of great work over there. So, that's what we have from that article. And then next up we have the makers, and this is the headline of the article. The makers of It try to explain why their movie worked when The Dark Tower didn't. And this is from Jermaine Lucier from IO9, and this is on September 18th, 2017. And this one is kind of what I alluded a little bit to earlier, and this might have a little bit of some conversating for sure. But this is, they were interviewing, Barbara Muschietti and Andy, which Andy Muschietti is the director, and Barbara works with him a lot. I think she's usually his producer. It isn't necessarily like Cohen's where they're like both directing, but she's the producer, he's the director. So it's talking to both of them, and this is kind of an interesting thing. And it kind of touches on some It stuff as well as gets into the Dark Tower, which is interesting. And it says clearly that wasn't the case for other major Stephen King adaptations. The Dark Tower hit theaters, and this is right after it went in. Talked about all the track record for what it's done so far. It says The Dark Tower hit theaters a few weeks prior and basically received the exact opposite reaction: critical dismay and audience rejection. Barbara Muschietti thinks that it's impossible to compare the two works because they're so different, but Andy feels that's why It was easier to sell than The Dark Tower. And here's a quote here. It says, It is a story that can be told without fantastic elements, he said. It's a story about a group of kids who are lonely and oppressed, and they learn to get powerful by getting together. So the fantastical element are sort of on back burner, and that's why people connected with it. It's a human story. So I think that's a very interesting take on it, don't you think?
Yeah, that's actually something I've never thought about.
Like, you could take It out of the movie, and that still might be a movie you might watch.
Yeah, it would. It kind of reminds me of like Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Yeah. So you got kids coming together to overcome loneliness and being an outcast and everything like that.
And things like the abusive parents. I mean, whatever, like, just evil adults, whatever you might want to look into. But yeah, it's definitely kind of an interesting thing I've never really considered before is that you can remove the fantastic elements of It. I've never even considered it for the book, but especially for the movie, it almost makes me want to go see it again and just kind of really think about that while watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll even do that when it comes out on Blu-ray and just watch through it and just think to myself.
Yeah, because the funny thing is, if you took out like the fantastical side of it and just made it like a real serial killer, you could even have that would be a really good movie almost.
Yeah,
I really think that would be just kids dealing with a serial killer loose in their town, a psychotic person just going around killing kids.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be something supernatural, but if they end up stumbling across something and have to fight him.
Yeah,
I mean that's basically what It is, except it's Pennywise is supernatural.
Yeah. So that's an interesting. Definitely an interesting take on from Andy Muschietti about what It is and like that kind of thing. But then it goes on here and says The Dark Tower is much less relatable, especially at the start of the story. And then this is a quote from Andy Muschietti. It says, "In the Dark Tower, we're almost immediately invited to jump into this world of fantasy." Andy continued, "That doesn't mean a lot of people won't like it. It's just more genre. I think and you can't expect a massive audience to eagerly jump into that reality." So that's
and we were worried about that beforehand, is how much world building they were going to be able to do with such a short runtime and everything.
yeah.
And it showed. A lot of people complained about, they didn't spend a lot of time in Midworld. A lot of it was in New York, and they didn't like that.
Yeah. Now, the question I would have is to take these things and say, like, let's just jive these two statements from Muschietti together. How could you make Dark Tower more of a human story? As versus like he's saying it's like a genre movie. Genre movies would generally be things like Star Wars, Star Trek. Like, it's something you're taking someone completely out of reality and putting them into another reality. Lord of the Rings, things like that, like genre affairs. How would you ground, like, and to be more of a human story? It made me think a little bit. It's like, because obviously people reacted pretty violently to the fact that Jake was a central character, because it feels to me that maybe what you do is you expand the movie out rather than be 95 minutes, add another 20-30 minutes on it, and spend most of that with Jake. Make it a lot about Jake. Make it, that one scene with Henry Bowers, with him and in the school.
And that's one of the things I had when we came out of the movie and recorded instantly was, I wish we had more Jake in New York before everything.
Before everything hits the fan.
He's still having visions and stuff like that, but more of him. Build him, because I'm focusing on him for this movie.
And it makes me wonder, with everyone saying, like, oh, a TV show or whatever, and I could agree. A TV show probably would have, I think a TV show in this day and age especially is always going to be better, because TV is just doing
age of TV, like you always
TV's
say.
doing so good. But it makes me think that, like, you almost could have a 2-episode thing without Roland even showing up. Just 2 full episodes of Jake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Establish the character, establish the world he lives in, and not necessarily like it is a different world. It is our world, but what's the world that Jake Chambers lives in?
What is like, his world?
Yeah, like bullying, parents, whatever it might be. If you take elements from the movie, a dad that's dead and a stepdad that's somewhat indifferent to your existence, like there's all kinds of stuff to play on there. But again, it feels like fans are before the movie came out, fans are very apprehensive of the fact that Jake was taking a central role in it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do Roland's say, how do you make it more human, I guess?
The only thing I can think of is, like you were talking about, is where you take someone and put them into a situation and then you have them learn about the world going through it. So either you have Roland come all the way over to Earth and stay there, or you take Jake, Eddie, Susanna, and you put them in Midworld and they stay there.
Yeah.
Which like what was his name? Muschietti?
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but
that's basically what he's saying with it, is you put the kids into a situation and you travel along with them dealing with the situation. What we didn't have in Dark Tower was one person or a group going into a situation and staying there. It was an evolving situation, but we get that later in the books. He's absolutely right about that. Once you hit Wastelands and you get the Ka-Tet pulled, yeah, they make little trips back to New York to do something.
And I'd even say drawing
Ka-Tet.
Yeah, I'd even say drawing the 3, because those are human stories. I mean, you're
Eddie
ripping,
with his addiction,
ripping people out of a world that may not even be the best world to be in, but there's people that live in these worlds that are very intricate, and you're pulling them out of that into something else. It's I would say that I would argue that from there, but even in the books, I would say there is more of a human element in Gunslinger than probably was in the movie. But a lot of that is through your flashbacks and through internal monologues and stuff.
Which is the stuff that we talked about that it's really hard to film.
It's hard to film that stuff. And that's something that, especially for a movie, even if you did a 2.5-hour movie, which is generally standard nowadays, you'd have a hard time with that. Versus, again, a TV show, you could even just show a couple episodes of just nothing but Jake. So now you're not having to deal with, in the book, him telling the story about his parents and the way they're cold towards him. And there's things you get that's whatever. Instead of him telling Roland about that, just have show people that. Yeah. But you can't do that in a movie. You're never going to be able to do that in a movie.
No.
Even if you're Peter Jackson, you're going to do a 4-hour movie, it's going to be hard to do that in a movie.
Exactly.
But that's where TV, it's just, you can spread out and live in the world a little bit more. TV versus movies, you're just bam, you hit and run.
And that was the other thing too, is we remember them talking about the short runtime, is that they wanted to keep it short and sweet, and
which I get.
They wanted people wanting more and everything like that. But the problem was that the people who wanted more had a reason for wanting more. They wanted to connect with someone.
Yeah.
That was their big thing, is they wanted someone like we've talked about with the human interest story. And the only human interest story in this movie was Jake. That was it.
Yeah, and I would even say, like, because, like, dude, if they would have just had some more time, because I even think of, like, I'm blanking on her name right now. The seer in the town, in the Manny village.
Oh, yeah.
And she was in Age of Ultron, the actress was.
Yeah.
And I think she's actually an up-and-comer. I'm reading a lot about her. I think she's going to be in a lot of movies here in the wild. I think she's going to be a name that people should keep an eye on. But I think, like, even her, like, that character is interesting to me. And I would have loved to have even spent a little bit more time with her somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Maybe again, like we talked about this
Why
before.
didn't she go with him?
Or even like, I mean, even maybe just show me a little bit of the town before Roland and Jake showed up. Just a little bit, just enough to like give you a sense of who these people are a little bit. And again, maybe that's just a little bit indulgent, because we talked about that. Yeah. It's indulgent. Us as book fans, you know, we want to indulge ourselves a little bit, but at the same time, it makes me wonder, like, you could have had a little bit more humanity in it by maybe having that, or even like, you know, Flag is messing with that Taheen, and the other Taheen is obviously concerned to where like they're probably lovers.
Yeah,
you know, there's like the tech guy, and he's like super concerned about the one, like even that, like, show some humanity in humans, like show. You, I mean, you can, and this isn't like necessarily to rail the movie, because we both loved it. But I'm just saying that, like, now in the wake of it, let's look back at what Muschietti is saying made his film successful versus what Dark Tower wasn't. How could we see that done in here? And I will say here in the chat, Ryan's mentioned that Wizard and Glass is a human story, and I would totally agree. And I think that's why the TV series excites the fuck out of me so much, is because like that's a story that could draw people in my opinion. And it also is a story that not only is not superhuman, it's very human, but also it's one that will expose people to the world of Midworld, and in a way that like is natural, because like with Roland, for instance, going to a different realm of a different area of the kingdom or whatever, like he has to learn new customs and stuff, and like whatever. So like through like him learning the customs of Magus, you would see like we would be learning it. You
know, honestly, now I'm starting to look back at people saying that the village should have been the Kalas, and we should have had that in the first movie right there, instead of the like almost Manny village. And that's where I'm starting to see where people, they might have been right about that. You have the Kala village where we're introduced to that, and Jake has to learn about the Kala Bryn Sturgis and everything like that, and Roland's also kind of learning a little bit as he goes, because that's farther out than he's ever traveled in his time as a gunslinger.
Yeah. So that would definitely be a more human element. And like Ryan even says, maybe they should have started with Roland's childhood for a movie. And I think that would have been a very risky move for sure, because you're basically saying like, we're going to launch this franchise. I guess you would be saying you're launching it from the starting point, but at the same time, so much of what a lot of us cling to is the stuff later in the story. So I even think you'd have maybe have a deal, even if you did a good adaptation of Wizard and Glass, even a small part of it, maybe you were going to do a couple movies to cover it. I think that you'd have some fans that would be like, how the hell can you start here? You know what I mean? Like versus like the Man in Black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed type stuff.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it's just definitely something that makes me just think a little bit about like humanity, as Muschietti saying, and what drove his, and how it could have fit more. And I really think that, again, though, it's what's funny is I almost feel the best way for the movie that we got to take that script and add more humanity to it, the best way probably would have been, again, with that script, without doing a whole rewrite, a massive rewrite, would have been to give us more Jake.
Yep.
Add another 20-30 minutes to the movie and have it all be about Jake and the world he lived in to attach him. But then again, fans are already bitching about that. It shouldn't be Jake's movie. It should be Roland's.
And if we want to do that, then it's Roland showing Jake his world instead of going back to New York. Have them stay in Midworld. Have Roland show him Midworld and just stay there. And then have a portal at the end instead of him saying, you know, well, come with me, and they go through a portal. At a portal, and Jake's like, well, okay, I got to go home now. And he's like, well, you're got nothing over there, so you might as well stay with me. I understand things would have had to change. I mean, he goes back to his apartment and sees that his mom died there and everything like that.
Yeah.
That would have had to been done differently, but keep Jake in Midworld, and that's where we have like that. And I think I talked about this last time. That's where you have the audience learning about a new world through a character.
Yeah.
And a lot of successful stories do that. I mean, we get this in Dark Tower through Eddie and Susanna and Jake and Roland. All of them learn new things by experiencing the world instead of just being told it and just flying by the seat of their pants and everything like that. But if you take Jake and instead of having him go back to New York with Roland, when the Men in Black takes him, or with Roland, you have him stay in Midworld. You're going to have them learn about Midworld, and Midworld is the universe that we're going to build on.
Yeah,
not New York.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of what you're saying there is it makes me even wonder now this is a really tall order, because I think one of the strongest moments of the movie was when Jake finds out that his mom did die. But dude, what if his mom didn't die and he still had that choice at the end to go with Roland or not?
Yeah,
with his mom being alive.
That would be a very different choice for Jake.
I mean, that would, because a little bit more human. But again, I wouldn't want to lose that moment of him finding out of his mom's death, because I think that's probably one of the strongest moments of the movies in a lot of ways, and it led to the Gunslinger Creed scene, which is probably the best moment in the whole movie. For sure. But yeah, and then Lydia in the chat here says, I wish people making the decisions for this intellectual property would realize that it's the characters and the atmosphere that makes Stephen King stuff great. The action and the scares were always secondary to me, and I would say I totally agree with that.
Right.
I mean, with everything. I mean, like The Stand. Like, I don't sit there and go, God, I can't wait to go through the Lincoln Tunnel again. You know, or I can't wait. I can't wait for the wolves with the kid. Like, no. It's going back to visit all my friends. Like those characters, like their interactions with each other. Like there is elements of like, oh, I can't wait to see Stu getting out of that thing through that stairwell and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but like, it almost isn't because of the scare as much as it is like
you care about the character.
Yeah, like seeing the character through these horrible moments and stuff. And of course, the ultimate Randy Flagg. Of course, I mean that's the
ultimate evil.
That's the main reason for me to want to go back and visit old friends.
The ultimate evil.
Oh man, the one that has no crime in his society.
So the thing that Tad and I did earlier required us to drive out into a more exclusive area of the Utah desert, desolate area. And we saw a few crows, and every time we would see one, Ted would be like, "Hey, Randy, how's it going, Randy? There's my boy Randy over there.
He's just watching.
Yeah,
he's just watching on a power pole that was very cross-like. Of course, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then Lydia probably reacting to what we were saying earlier about whatever she says because. That most of his long-form novels, including Dark Tower, are perfectly suited for long-running TV series. And I totally agree. I just feel that the TV series would definitely give it more time to breathe. Like, I look at something like, and I know I keep coming back to this, and I'm doing a rewatch, so that might be part of it. So sorry if you guys are getting sick of it. But like Breaking Bad, one of the greatest things ever put to film and it's on television. Imagine if you try to do that story in 2 hours.
No.
In some way. I mean, you probably could get the bare bones of it, but so much of what made that show great would be lost because
it's the transformation of the characters in that show that are so compelling. You have one that starts on this side of the spectrum and one that starts on the other side of the spectrum. And slowly throughout the show, they start to switch sides and everything like that. You can't do that in 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, and then Lydia says you only care about the scary stuff because the characters, because you care about the person, and that's true. I mean, you care about Stu when he's going through that wiped out CDC building. You care about Larry when he's going through that tunnel. You
care about Nick dealing with the Arkansas town.
Yeah,
and everything. You start to care about these characters. You sympathize with them and what they're going through because.
And the same can be said for It. I mean, you care about these kids, you know.
Because we've all been kids.
Yeah, and you...
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about the comparison between some of what the kids did and what I did as a kid.
Yeah,
you know?
Generally, you'll latch onto one of them as like, that reminds me of me a little bit in some way.
Well, even like activities they did. Like there's the scene where in the book where his dad tells him, "Hey, ride your bike out here and bring back something that we can, a souvenir that we can chat about. It's a pretty cool place." My dad's done that for me.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, on this summer day, you should hop on this bus, take this bus, and go down here and check out the downtown library. It's pretty cool." Yeah. And I've done stuff like that. And then there's other times where he's like, "You know what? Hop on this train and this bus and come down and have lunch with me."
Yeah.
And then you're just like exploring. You know? I live in a city. I grant that. It's not as small as a little main town, but I live in a city and there's a lot of cool stuff to see here. And my dad did that with me, so I related a lot to what Mike did with that. But then there's also like Richie going to the movies with Bev and Ben.
Yeah,
I did that with my friends all the time. My parents would take me over and drop me over at the mall and
have go to the drinks on bullies' heads.
Go to the dollar theater. It's popcorn, not drink.
In the TV series, he did a drink as well.
Oh, is it drink?
Popcorn
I was thinking of the movie. I was thinking of the book.
I remember upending the cup on him and just yeah.
No, I didn't really have to deal with bullies.
Well, we also wouldn't have any theaters in Utah that had a balcony either.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's definitely true. I think, and that's where, and again, I think we both love the movie, but I think now it's just more of like looking at the movie in light of it and just to see that kind of thing of what might be missing. And I think it does ultimately still come back to the idea that a TV series is probably the best way to tell this story.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've seen it on the big screen. I would have no qualms with us not seeing another movie and just seeing some TV series.
Yeah,
show Wizard and Glass, and from there people love it.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. See if Idris wants to still be involved, and if not Matthew, we know that Flag is a man of many faces, so he could definitely change things up.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the other thing I was thinking about recently is they can't call him Flag because I think Warner Brothers owns the rights currently to the Stand. Now, those rights tend to change when a TV series versus a movie, because there might be a case where nobody has TV rights to something called Randall Flagg, so he might be able to call himself by the right name in a TV series. But then maybe just go from there, cast those people, cast an Eddie and Susanna, and
we have an Eddie. His name is Aaron Paul. You don't forget that, Ted.
Oh man, yeah, it's definitely in my head. Especially when we were reading for our last book for our book club, which is the last episode. I'm right in the middle of my current rewatch of Breaking Bad, so it was just like so fresh to like convert the two and just picture it as Eddie Dean.
I'll never understand how you can watch multiple TV shows at one time. You're such an odd duck. You know that?
It's not that hard.
You were telling me when we were driving back today that you were watching another TV show.
Oh yeah, well I usually have like a drama and a comedy.
And you haven't finished Ozark?
No, I finished that.
You
last
finally
weekend.
finished.
Yeah.
When?
Last weekend.
Last weekend. You've been watching Breaking Bad, what, for like 3 weeks now?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're watching 3 different shows at once. You are a madman.
A madman. That's another show I've been thinking about rewatching.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, man. And let's see. I think that trying to look back on the chat and see if there's anything that I missed. Let's see. Empathy with the kids and it is one of the reasons why it was so successful. Hopefully people will take note, what Lydia said. Yeah, I think that
Lydia hasn't watched Breaking Bad. Just wanted to point that out too.
Oh yeah, I'd highly recommend it for sure. Highly recommend it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's really what it comes down to is like there's a lot of humanity in it, and that may have been lost a little bit in Dark Tower. And I will say, I disagree with a lot of the fans because I don't think that you can have Roland be the central character if you want humanity.
You can't. We've talked about this.
He's not human early on.
He is a Terminator early on.
Early on, he is going to be he doesn't. In my opinion, he doesn't become a human until after the reclaiming of Jake. I think that's really where the beginning of his humanity starts again.
No, he doesn't become a human until 5.
Oh, I'm saying that I think that
him telling about Susan is where it breaks for him.
No,
him going back to get Jake is just strictly to save his sanity. That's strictly to keep being able to go to the tower. But it's not out of the goodness of his heart.
At that point, I believe legitimately that when he gets Jake back and he's hugging him and he tells him, "I'm never going to let you go again," type thing. I believe he's legitimate at that point, and that's why I'm saying I think that's the first. Like we always talk about scales, and I think for the scale of Terminator to human, a huge jump happened by like all the events of book 3. But I will say yes, sharing the thing with Susan. And the Wizard and Glass, basically book 4. I will say that was probably a bigger jump for sure because like he's opening himself up and like that kind of thing for sure. So I would totally agree. That's a huge thing. I'm just saying that I think there's it's very big with Jake, and I'm not sure exactly why. And maybe in past things he didn't let Jake die. Maybe Jake just died in other ways, and who knows? But I think that there's something big about Jake dying, because of Roland, and then like because there's just something about that when that reconnection happens. I think that's a magic moment for sure, and I think that's a huge event. So I would say up until that point, though, which is potentially a movie or so down the way, he's not a human. So you can't really grab a human element from Roland because he's not, unless you were to start bringing in past stuff and you wanted to gut book 4 and bring in some of that stuff in and cross-cut it in the movie. But now you're talking about an even longer movie because now you're wasting precious book 1, book 2 time on book 1 and 4 stuff with his flashbacks.
Well, I'm not saying that he's not good for saving Jake. I'm just saying that his intentions behind it may not have been the most noble. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Roland does strictly to get to the tower. Sometimes it hurts people. Sometimes it helps people.
No, I agree.
That's all I'm saying. Is that until book 5, he doesn't do anything for anyone that doesn't benefit him getting to the tower.
Yeah,
not until the Kalas.
Yeah, I think
the only time.
I think the distinction in my mind is that I agree with what you're saying there. But what I'm saying is I think the moment that Jake is saved, I think something happens to Roland at that point.
That he wouldn't have been able to make that change to help the people on the Colossus without saving Jake. And I agree with that.
Yeah,
I absolutely
and like
agree
I said,
with that.
Like, it might be self-interest to stop the insanity early on, but I think the moment when Jake's finally there and he's hugging him, that's a moment where, like, something is very different there. That's a different Roland than I saw that gunned down Tull. That's a different Roland that, was, just
on the
basically
beach with Eddie.
Yeah, on the beach with Eddie or Susanna or whoever else that was there. Like, there's a difference there, and I could totally agree with what you're saying, that potentially a lot of book 3 was more about saving himself than anyone else.
See, now the argument I would say that goes on your side against mine is that if Jake is promising he never let Jake fall again, and then instantly keeping that promise in Lud.
Yeah, and also at the very end,
that would be,
because his ultimate goal was to jump in front of the car so that Jake wouldn't be killed. So,
well, no, but I'm talking about like early on,
totally.
With
that. But it sticks though, is what I'm saying. Like, so yes, true in Lud, but then also as you get further on in the future, where legitimately, like, full on, he was going to end his quest for the tower to save Jake.
To save King,
it
wouldn't have any action that he took there wouldn't have been in the mind's eye of saving Jake. There was nothing there that put Jake in danger until Roland's body failed and Jake threw himself in front of the car.
But I thought he kind of I think he had the suspicion that Jake was going to do it if he didn't.
No, he knew Jake would, but he knew that he had to do it, not Jake. And yes, I see what you're saying there, but there was no danger to Jake unless he didn't do it.
Yeah,
and that's where the sacrifice comes in. And everything.
Roland from book 1 would have just been like, "Oh, well, let the kid do it. Like, I'm too important. My quest is more important than this kid's life." And he would have maybe he would have even fucking thrown Jake in front of the car to save himself. But in his mind, it's like, I got to do this because it cannot be the boy. Right. I can't let that happen.
The question posed in the chat is, would a nameless Roland, a Jakeless Roland have helped the children of the Colossus? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, it's hard to say.
My big thing is why didn't he save Tull?
Yeah.
He could have saved Tull. There's a way to fix Tull.
Potentially.
But he didn't. Did he save Lud? No, there was no way to save Lud.
I would say even before the attack of Tull would be the question, because I think you can, you made the defense before when I've told you about how Flag is bringing people back and Roland's killing them. They are trying to kill him. They're in a mob. But the question is
why didn't he do something before that?
Yeah, before the attack happened.
Right.
Something to help them. I don't know. But yeah, I think it'd be a hard. I think in my opinion, you wouldn't get to Roland in book 5 without Jake, because that's the other thing. I almost think it's like dominoes, because I don't know if he would have revealed the story of Susan to the Ka-Tet had it not been for the salvation of Jake.
But I don't think it's just Jake, though. Let's not give all the credit to Jake. There's a lot of it that is to deal with Susanna and Eddie as well. It's the whole Ka-Tet that brings out the humanity in Roland, not just Jake. But it starts with Jake. You're right.
I think it's a switch. If you flip a switch, I think it's Jake.
Well, but if you flip the switch and then have a knob that cranks it, it's not all Jake that turns up the humanity in Roland. Yes, Jake is the one that helped him flip the switch. But Eddie is a large part, because Eddie is a huge part of Roland's conscience.
Yeah.
And so is Susanna. He has to think about her perspective and everything like that as well. He takes their opinions into account.
Oh, yeah.
Even as early as book 3.
But I think we even talked about this going into the movie, especially with all the people that are complaining about no Eddie and Susanna, is that there is definitely something more important about Jake and Roland's relationship than the others.
Because
people
because Jake was dropped.
And those people are important, but there's a far greater and more, I don't even know what you would say, more significant relationship with him. Like,
it's a deeper relationship for sure.
It's the father-son thing. Whereas, like, I feel like he has a fatherly role with the others of the Ka-Tet, but nowhere.
It's more of a big brother, I feel.
Yeah,
it's a big brother with Eddie and Susanna.
It's barely a fatherly role.
Maybe an uncle type role, like someone who's okay. They have a little
mentor.
They have a mentor.
A mentor is basically what it comes down to.
They have some authority over me, but they are not, a parent figure.
Yeah. I feel like the others of the Ka-Tet definitely give him reverence at points, but I don't feel that they give him the same treatment that Jake does. I feel at times they speak to him on the level of, like, we're both adults here. Like, you know what I mean? Eddie levels with him at times. Susanna levels with him at times. Now, of course, Jake blows up at him a few times, but I feel that Jake always kind of has that father-son role with him that you don't see and I think that's what we're talking about when it comes to either a mentor or an uncle with the other ones, is that with them, they treat Roland differently and he treats them differently. And I think that's because they are a little bit different. Like there's there's the element of like, you know, Jake is essentially his son. And,
Jim says in the chat, Jake should have sacrificed in the movies so that Ka-Tet could draw him in the next movie or so. Next movie too. Remember,
I agree, and I think the
test footage
I think
was Jake dying.
The rumors are the test audiences really hated that, and that's the reason it changed. So that's definitely a studio thing there. I really believe, and I was even telling Peter, I think, I don't even know if that was on air or not, but I really believe that what it may have even been is that Roland didn't have a clear shot of what he needed, so he had to shoot Jake to stop. You know, like maybe make it to where you can't just shoot the machine to stop it, but he had to kill Jake because it was too far, whatever. Like, I feel that's probably that scene almost would have been the same, except for the fact that he would have been gunning down Jake. But it sounds like a lot of the rumors say that the test audiences were very against that, and that's why it changed.
And it's something that we talked about before the movie came out when it was being filmed and everything.
Would they kill Jake?
Yeah, would they kill Jake? And how can we have a hero of a story who sacrifices a teenage boy for the greater good, kind of thing? You know, like how many heroes have done that in films? I mean, can you name one who's ever sacrificed a child for the greater good and come away looking like a good guy?
And I think that's the thing is, like, I would say it's even more debatable. I can't even can you even say that in Roland's case it is for the greater good? I don't think the audience, especially even as readers, I don't think a lot of us are on Roland's side that like it was worth it. You know what I mean? Like, the greater good is like, oh, you have to kill this kid to get to the nuke that's gonna like about to blow this city up. Like, yeah, okay, that's the greater good. You're sacrificing one for the sake of millions. Like, whereas, like, of course we know the significance of the tower and stuff, but it's like, I think a lot of us question, like, would Flag have actually left? You know, it feels like Flag has so much to do with Roland that even if Roland would have stopped to help Jake, he still would have had a chance at Flag at some point. Even if it wasn't at the Golgotha, it could have been down the way a little ways. But it just doesn't feel like that was that open and shut moment to where, like, that's where most of us sit there and go, oh, come on, Roland. Like,
I think that Roland was a little bit tricked at that moment to believe that he had to catch Flag.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And honestly, maybe that was Flag's intention all along, is that's where a part of Roland's humanity dies.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where Roland can finally fully redeem himself. Everyone looks at later points in the book series where, oh, this is the point where if Roland turns away, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've saved the breakers. Time to move on.
Yeah.
What if it's as early as book 1? What if it's as early as stopping to help Jake? Yes, he can still have a quest for the tower and a quest to save it and everything like that. But he's shown that the tower is not more important than this boy's life.
Yeah.
He can still quest for it. He can still want to reach it and everything like that. And you know what? Maybe he won't reach it, but maybe he'll make it safe before he dies.
Yeah.
And that's where he breaks the cycle, is that moment there where he goes to reach, you know, I have to save Jake or I have to catch the man in black. Okay, I got to save this boy. That's the right thing to do. And that moment is where that final piece, like you've talked about, just back into his soul. And that's where he redeems himself and breaks the cycle.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that, like, just to kind of like to piggyback on what Muschietti was saying here with like it being a genre thing, is I can't help but jump over and think, okay, let's look at some other genre things. And of course, because you all know me well enough by now, you should know that I'm probably going to go to Star Wars. And I think of like Star Wars, for instance. So you're asking people there to jump into another galaxy, but it's such a familiar story. You know what I mean? Princess, like, you know, whatever.
Bad guy,
like,
evil empire.
Young boy that's kind of like backwater, whatever you want to call it. Like, it would be like a peasant
it's
in a
the
fable.
chosen one story.
But even when it comes down to the very first Star Wars movie, he's not even the chosen one. It's just like a kid that gets swept up into all this and turns out to be the one that saves the day in the end of the movie. If you just look at that, so like it's very familiar. I think that like even when it comes down to that, is like for genre to be successful, I guess, let's look at Dark Tower and that effect is like you're asking people to jump into a genre here, but it's stuff that there's very little for normal not uneducated for the non-reading audience, for the unenlightened to the Dark Tower. It's hard for those people to jump in because what are they latching onto? None of this is familiar to them. Like gunslingers that are kind of like knights, like that's very strange. That doesn't fit with anything else.
The
like
thing was,
you
also
mentioned King Arthur, but it's like there's other than the fact that his guns might be made from the sword of Arthur, which is said in there. But beyond that, it's like that's so late in the movie. Also, it's just like, well, you don't have Guinevere and everything else. It's like this isn't an Arthurian like archetype. Like there's no archetypes to latch on to.
They didn't give you enough with Roland's knighthood and being a gunslinger, how that relates to being like a knight of the Round Table and stuff like that. They're just like, oh, he's He's a knight descended from Arthur Eld. That's like,
but the movie,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
But the movie, that's at the very end. That's
Yeah.
like when he's like Flag's watching him.
It's the attack on the Manny village, which is over halfway through the movie.
Yeah, that's like at the end of the second act. So it's
no,
like,
what it should have been is Jake asking questions to Roland as soon as he gets to Midworld, like, what are you? Like, who are you? What is a gunslinger? What does a gunslinger do? What did the gunslinger stand for? Where are the rest of them?
yeah,
Almost like, like kind of like it would have been nice if they had that,
and
where
even do it like you just said it there, like that child thing where like the second
they just
answers,
rattle
he has
off
the next one.
they
Like,
just rattle off. Just imagine if Jake rattled off like 15. Like they sit down, he explains the Dark Tower to him, and he's like, "Can I ask you some questions? Like I'm not understanding everything." And Roland's like, "I'll answer them if I can," And he just rattles off 7 straight questions.
yeah.
What
Just
are gunslingers? Where did you come from?
Like machine gun
yeah,
questions.
just like Roland does. And then you get a little bit of a humor moment. Whoa, slow down, one at a time, kind of thing. I mean, Roland's hard and everything like that, but even in like Gunslinger, he's not that hard to Jake. He still cares about him even that early on at the way station, even because Jake saved his life.
Yeah.
So I mean, part of me just kind of wishes that they would have done a little bit more. Not just a tragic father and son. Okay, well, my mom was murdered. You have to help me get vengeance.
Yeah.
Dad figure.
Yeah.
More of a build up the relationship before the mom gets murdered, and now the dad is like, okay, we're going to go kick this guy's ass for you.
Yeah. Yeah, just something else for people to latch on to, because I think that you're asking people to jump into a genre like Machete says here. But it's like there's not a lot familiar. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of other things. A lot of that genre. A lot of the genre stuff that's come in the past that wasn't super familiar, like Star Wars, usually ended up being cult movies, like cult classics. Like none of them were, not a lot of the stuff that was genre in the past that was super out there usually ended up being stuff that was very like niche, very cult classic, and just never had that massive following like Star Wars. And I think that was like kind of the point Lucas is making is like, I can make the space opera, but I'm going to use like the whole Joseph Campbell Hero 1,000 Faces stuff and make it to where feels so familiar to everyone. And I feel that's what really made Star Wars the phenomenon that it is. Yeah. And that's just something that you don't necessarily have with Dark Tower. And I wouldn't want them to force that. I wouldn't want them to force elements in. So that's kind of a weird, I guess, thing is like, I guess that's kind of a solution, but I don't know if it's one that fits the Dark Tower necessarily. Because I don't know how you would approach it, except for what you just said there is like maybe like the whole revenge thing, like a revenge, but that would have to even maybe move it around to where that happened very early in the movies somehow to where, you know what I mean? Because you got to get people early. You don't want, because you can lose them, like you can lose audiences where they're like 20 minutes in, they're just like, yeah, I just don't get this. And you've lost them at that point. Their mind is just like Homer Simpson with stuff going on in their brain and they're not paying attention to the movie. So,
yep.
Yeah, that's also I will say somebody also earlier mentioned casting I blanked on his name that plays the Punisher for
John Bethel.
Yeah, for Roland, and I would say that would kind of it gets obviously into the realm of like a reboot for sure. And also he is somewhat busy, I think.
A little bit busy.
Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely some good thoughts from Andy Muschietti, and I think that's really interesting, the fact that people asked him to compare the two and that he answered them. Like that's definitely not one that I expected to hear, like Andy Muschietti's thoughts on the Dark Tower. That's definitely not something. I mean, we've heard more from him about it than we have from Nikolai.
I think Nikolai has been restrained somewhere in a room that he's not allowed to talk about it.
I don't know that he's necessarily not allowed, but I think it's one of those things that like just the way the business and the industry works. Like, if a director leaves a film, which obviously he didn't do, but in those cases, they never go, a lot of times they never go and tell you why. They always just say it was creative differences, like that's like the stock answer. So, but like, I think it's just one of the more of those things, like a professional courtesy more than anything. But yeah, we definitely haven't heard a lot from him since the movie came out. There was that one interview that we alluded to a few roundtables ago.
Yeah.
But beyond that, he's been radio silent.
And that's the interview that was in like Sweden or something like that, wasn't it? Or Danish?
Yeah, Danish.
And then the website was taken down. Like the story was taken down.
Yeah, for sure. So that's that. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing here.
Are you going to tell them?
This is on September 19th, so the 19th.
Oh, okay.
Happening again, even after the movie. 2017, and it is Bring Down the Dark Tower this Halloween on home video. And I love the way that they title that. Bring down the Dark Tower. They're just making it flag. I love it. This is from Brad Miska from Bloody Disgusting, and again, September 19, 2017. And this is the announcement of the Blu-ray / DVD / of digital too, because as I get into these notes here, there's only a few notes in this one, obviously. But this is also talks about the digital for people like Peter that are all into the digital thing. And it says Idris Elba, Prometheus, and Academy Award-winning Matthew McConaughey, Best Actor, Dallas Buyers Club, star in The Dark Tower, an adventure based on Stephen King's book series, debuts on digital October 17th, and on 4K Ultra HD / Blu-ray, Blu-ray and DVD on October 31st from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. So Halloween. Now, if you guys follow us on social media, you probably already know that for some weird reason, I bought the movie the weekend it came out. A lot of times Amazon has pre-orders the same weekend the movie comes out, which is kind of cool, especially for someone like me that collects this stuff. So I pre-ordered it then, and I got an email, I think it was Tuesday.
Wednesday.
And it was like, your package has been shipped with Dark Tower. I'm like, wait, I thought it was coming out around Halloween. And I'm like, it's got to be a mistake of some kind. It's probably not really shipping. But lo and behold, yesterday it did come, and as we speak this moment, Peter has it in his hands. My Blu-ray copy of Dark Tower. And it's actually
this is going home with me. You know that, right?
Yeah, over my dead body.
That can be arranged, sir.
And it's funny because I also do like the voodoo thing, or like the digital copies, ultraviolet stuff. And it's funny because I tried to put the code in for this one, and when I went to Voodoo, which is the one that I use for my digital copies, it didn't work. And basically, essentially, it was because what you do when you're typing those in is you type in the name of the movie, and once that pulls up and it shows the cover of the movie, then you type in like the alphanumeric code that that is like whatever magic that gives you the movie.
The like 16-digit code.
Yeah, and this one, it would not pull up. It basically was like the Dark Tower movie didn't exist. I'm like, oh, it's because it's not out yet.
Yeah.
So probably come Halloween, I'll be able to put it on my Voodoo.
And I pre-ordered it on Voodoo.
Or no, maybe the 17th.
Yeah,
maybe.
because digital. I pre-ordered it on Voodoo, and I went to go check after you're like, hey, I actually did get it yesterday. I was like, did that happen to everyone across all the platforms? So I went to go check it. It's like, nope, check back on the 17th to see if you to rent this, to rent or buy this movie. And I was like,
yeah. And then I also looked at Best Buy also. And this is mostly United States. I know overseas things are a little bit different, but I know here in the United States, Best Buy is also going to have a steel book. If you're a collector of hard media, you probably know what steel books are, and they're like the metal cases with usually a lot different art design and stuff.
Yep.
But that comes out on the 31st, and that is in 4K as well. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can get that on there. If you pre-order it from anywhere, basically you're going to get it on Halloween. Apparently, other than Amazon. I don't know if you guys that are listening now, if you guys wanted to still buy it, you can go check Amazon to see if they'll buy it and ship it to you now, or if Sony slapped them in the face and said, hey, that's not out yet, and they stopped selling it. I don't know. But
I'm wondering if anyone else got it early.
Yeah, I think I did see at least one person on a subreddit on the Dark Tower subreddit that has it. So I'm definitely not the only one. But yeah, there was some mistake definitely made for sure. And I don't know. I even wonder if Dark Tower originally was supposed to release around now. But no, that doesn't make sense either, because because they ship it to where it gets to you the day that it is supposed to come out. And the date they gave me was Friday. And movies don't come out on Fridays. Movies
come out on Tuesdays.
Movies come out on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So there's no sense to be made of it. But either way, I have it now, so that's kind of cool. And I could either read this from this article, or I could read it from the back of my Blu-ray case, but it goes into some of the special features. It says the Dark Tower Blu-ray is loaded with bonus material, including deleted scenes, a blooper reel, and, quote, a look through the keyhole, which features 3 vignettes narrated by Roland and the Man in Black. Also included are the 5 behind-the-scenes featurettes that captures the imagination of fans. The filmmaker and Stephen King reveal the plot points that allow the film to pay tribute to everything great about Stephen King's novel, while making it a whole new experience for fans in the last time around. Fans step inside the fully realized sets and locations that play host to the physical embodiment of Stephen King's midworld in The World Has Moved On. For The Man in Black, Matthew McConaughey takes the audience inside his perceptions and processes for portraying the villain Walter, aka the Man in Black. Fans go behind the scenes and inside the stunt team's process for creating the action-packed battle in the Gunslinger in action. Stephen King discusses the journey from his book series to the screen and Stephen King inspirations. So seems like it is, we got some deleted scenes, which is the big one. I see some people in the chat already reacting to that, but also a lot of behind the scenes stuff, which is really cool. I'm really happy with that because we were really worried that we'd get like a bare bones release with almost nothing involved.
Yeah.
So it's really good that we got a lot to look at. And I haven't even delved into it yet because we were doing our thing this morning and it was going to be early. So I, got it. Yesterday, was it?
Yeah.
Yesterday was Friday. Yeah. Losing track of days now.
Like you always do.
And I had to obviously go to bed early to be up early to go do this and then record. So I haven't had a chance, hopefully maybe even delve into it tonight. But yeah, so it is, I don't want to say it's available, but
something happened.
If you pre-ordered it, you may already have it. If not, come Halloween, it'll be out. And it makes me think that also because I didn't think that would be coming out this quick, but we definitely have a commentary that we have to be thinking about pretty soon too.
Yes, sir.
Which will be really fun.
Hey, there's your movie. I put it back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's right there.
Trust me, sir. You will not get out alive. If you try to take my Dark Tower. But what I was telling Peter on the way we were driving back for our thing that we were doing this morning, and I told him, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if this is actually just a payback for all the times they delayed the movie. They just sent me the Blu-ray early.
Yeah, no kidding.
As a payback for all the delays of the actual movie coming to the theaters.
It's their way of making it up to you, Ted.
Yeah.
Now, how are they going to make it up to me?
I don't know.
They don't care about me.
Yeah.
Just like you don't.
Digital's a lot easier to control for sure, though, because I don't know, I'm sure that even if they put it out there for purchase or download, I'm sure that even if people bought it, I'm sure that with digital, they'd be able to take it off the person's account until it came out. Maybe probably offer refunds if people are too pissed off. But whereas with the movie, once Amazon put that bad boy in a box and hit ship, it was mine. There was no way to stop it.
Ding dong. Yes, sir. We sent you a package by mistake. Could we have it back, please?
Yeah, Amazon hired goons.
Yeah.
All right, so that's this article. So Halloween, October 31st is going to be the release date of The Dark Tower, which obviously is the very last Tuesday of this month. I guess we'll have to figure out whether we want to do the commentary after that when everyone has the movie, or whether we want to record it earlier and then have it out to where by the time it comes out you guys have it.
Don't we want to do it after so they can follow along and watch it with us?
I guess that's true. That's true. So
we don't want to be those jerks that are like, hey, we're doing a commentary on a movie, but you can't watch it yet.
See,
that's where Tad's evil. He didn't even think about you guys.
That
right there shows his evilness.
You know what it is
hashtag Tad is terrible.
I listen to a lot of podcasts that end up doing commentaries. I have yet to once actually listen to a commentary while watching the movie because usually
because most of them the movie by heart.
Yeah, it's true. So I just listen to them like I would any other podcast. So it's just the way I consume.
You're like, oh yeah, I know what scene they're talking about. Yeah, I've seen the stormtrooper hit his head. Yeah, I know exactly what they're talking about.
Oh man, Chris says, well, with 95-minute feature, there's a lot of space left on the disc for other stuff. Oh man, yeah, that's brutal, Chris. That's a mean one. I love it.
We got another one. How do you say that? Agamorphy? Do a watch along like Popcorn Talk Network.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is just a commentary, and I guess we haven't really even considered the fact of doing it live.
Yeah,
I guess. I almost think we just assume we do almost everything live, but for the most part, I haven't even considered the fact that this would be potentially different. But no, I don't think that it will be. I think we'll have it live. I was just looking at the calendar here, so we're going to be recording the very first weekend of November,
the weekend right after Halloween.
So that might be commentary time. So everyone, if you guys, I guess unless you hated the movie, go ahead and buy your copies and stuff and have them ready, and we will
we'll sync them up.
Do it. Yeah, we'll do a sync up and watch through it together live. And if you
have you guys able to interact with the chat and everything.
Yeah, if you're not able to join, then you guys can always listen in the podcast version and hit play at the same time we hit play and watch the movie as we talk about it. If that's your kind of if that's the thing you're into, which I definitely am. I can definitely see why some people wouldn't be though. All right, so that is the home movie release and the excitement of the fact that I got it early.
Jerk.
I was just waiting for something from the Peanut Gallery there.
Peanut Gallery? Who you calling Peanut Gallery, son?
All right. Next up is Stephen. This is the title of it. Stephen King on his new Netflix movies, It and His Big Year. So this one is by Kyle Buchanan from Vulture on September 25th, 2017. And this one is actually just a straight up interview where they have like the guy's question and then Stephen King's responses. And I will say, go to the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com because this interview is awesome and it gets into a lot of stuff that isn't Dark Tower. So I didn't get into a lot of it except for the Dark Tower stuff. There's a little bit here that's a little bit outside of the normal realm we would get into, but I thought it was very worth the wait worth talking about. But go ahead and go to the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com to grab the link for this interview and go read the whole thing because it's a very good interview by again Kyle Buchanan from Vulture. And it starts off here, and he said, this is the interviewer. He says, "You're on the record as having very sanguine attitude towards adaptations. A few years ago, you told Rolling Stones, quote, 'The movies have never been a big deal to me. The movies are movies. They just make them. And if they're good, that's terrific. If they're not, they're not.' But and then that's the end of the quote from Stephen King, or that the guy is quoting Stephen King to Stephen King. This is the guy again. He says, 'But did you always feel that way?' And Stephen King answers and says, 'I never had a problem with it from Carrie onwards. Even with Carrie, my feeling was they're going to make this movie. If it's successful, it will help me do what I do, which is to write books. When I was in college, I read something that stuck in my mind from James M. Cain, who did The Postman Always Rings Twice and Double Indemnity and Mildred Pierce. So this is actually interesting because we've actually heard a little bit of this before, but now we're actually hearing where it came from Stephen. And he says he did an interview near the end of his life where the reporter said, "They ruined your books for the movies." And Cain snapped his head around and pointed to the bookshelf and said, "No, they didn't. They're right. They're all right there." In a way, and that's the end of the quote. And Stephen finished off and says, "In a way, the book is untouchable." And I think we've heard Stephen say that multiple times, that, you know, your book is always on the shelf and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to hear where he's getting that from. Is this actually something that he heard back when he was in college and has stuck with him all along? So that's pretty interesting for sure, and kind of cool to hear. And then he actually goes on a little bit and he says, "Now, what Hemingway said is that the best thing that can happen to a writer is when they pay you a lot of money for it, but they never make the movie." I've never felt that way. I'm always anxious to see what they do with it. Sometimes they succeed, and sometimes you get pictures like Children of the Corn sequels. I've been down this road before in that sense, that a movie like Gerald's Game or 1922, it's easy to say this would be really difficult to make into a movie, but I felt that but I felt that way about Cujo, and they did a terrific job. So you'll never know what's going to happen. And that's an interesting one. He felt that Cujo was going to be extremely hard to film. And that makes you wonder, is that more of just because the result of what... well, maybe it's because the being stuck in the car. Like, it's kind of like that movie Phone Booth in the early 2000s. Like, you stick a guy in a phone booth for a whole movie.
A whole movie?
Like,
that's not going to work.
I guess in the same way with the Cujo. I guess that's true. But, yeah, maybe it's just that I'm biased by the fact that Cujo's a great movie, that I didn't even consider the fact that on paper it's maybe not the easiest one to adapt, I guess. And then let's see, what are we talking about in the chat here?
Someone asked about Gerald's Game, so I'm just catching them up with what I thought and everything. And then we just had Joshua joined us. He says, "I'm late, Joshua from Louisiana here, first time in the live show." So we wanted to say hi all to Josh. And then he asked if we were going to do an It review. And Josh, you're going to have to check out this podcast.
Yeah, what you missed so far. We kind of got into a little bit, obviously, nothing too terribly in depth, but we did definitely talk about what we thought of It for sure, as much as we generally would. We never really got into like heavy, in-depth reviews for non-Dark Tower stuff, but yeah, we talked about it a little bit early on in this episode, but yeah. And Peter could even chat with you a little bit. And
I'll keep chatting with you, Josh. No worries.
Yeah. And then back to Mr. King here, and he says, the attitude has to be, quote, "I will get involved if you want me to get involved, and I have these controls over who's going to be cast and who will write the screenplay. I'm happy to do that when you understand that 90% of the time I'm going to say, that's fine, go ahead." So that's kind of interesting, because we heard about Stephen King having a lot of creative overview of the Dark Tower, but it sounds like he doesn't really use that very much. He's kind of one that's just going to green stamp quite a bit. So that's kind of interesting. Then he goes on. He has a lot about it towards this point. So he has one more element here before we get on to the next question. And he says, I think part of my laissez-faire attitude comes from A, I'm doing okay financially, so I can afford to take risks, and B, I've been prolific enough so that I don't feel upset about it. Take a guy like William Peter Blately when Friedkin made The Exorcist. That was his baby. So it was probably an extremely important event in his life. Same thing with Ira Levin, who did Rosemary's Baby. He was terrific, but he only wrote 4 novels. So when Polanski wanted to make Rosemary's Baby, Levin was very anxious that he followed the book very closely, right down to the kind of shirt that John Cassavetes' character wore. I'm just not that guy. I'm not that guy. I'm just not. My idea is if you're going to make changes, hopefully they work. There are changes in it that worked very well. And with Mr. Mercedes, which is on TV now, there are some terrific changes from the book. Sometimes you make those changes and they don't work really well. And I'm always sorry when that happens. So kind of an interesting look into Stephen King. And I mean, that isn't directly related to Dark Tower, but at the same time, it's very telling with like the fact he worked behind the scenes, but he's saying 90% of the time he's going to green stamp things, and also just like it's
water off his back. He doesn't really care if it doesn't do well because, like you said, the books are there on the shelf and he's financially stable.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to worry about the income from the movies or from it affecting his work.
Yeah,
so he's able to do his thing, and the movies are going to do their thing, and I think that's. I might be paraphrasing how he said it exactly. He's like, they're going to make the movie. They're going to make it.
Yeah.
Like, with or without me, they're going to have the rights. They're going to make the movie.
Yeah.
So, why be that guy that gets in the way?
Yeah. And I think that, like, also the fact that he has so many novels, that's an interesting point for him to point out that I've never considered. Like Thomas Harris, for instance, is one that we mentioned before. Like, he wrote the Hannibal Lecter books and Black Sunday. All of those have been adapted, but it's like that dude has like 5 books, like, but I do know that for the longest time he would refuse to watch any of the movies for his books just for whatever reason. But I think that now in this later age, he's actually seen all the movies now. But it's like, he probably feel a little bit different than a guy like Stephen King that has like 70 novels and like 100 and something short stories. Like,
yeah.
That's easy for him to just let it roll off his back. And I actually came to an epiphany while reading this article, and it made me think, because like a lot of people obviously didn't like Dark Tower. A lot of people didn't like some other stuff like Under the Dome, some of the other Stephen King adaptations and stuff. And it's funny because Stephen King generally is very positive about a lot of these things, and it made me think a little bit. And I'm like, wow, well, how is it that he just likes all these? And I had an epiphany. We've actually heard that he's always been like just a fan of cinema. We know that even as he became a prolific author and he's become like this guy, he's still a dude that'll go to the movie theaters to watch movies, specifically horror movies. Like, he'll watch genre movies, horror movies. Like, he's into that kind of like pulpy stuff. He's not necessarily one that's like, oh, I only watch Citizen Kane. Like, no, he's like a guy that's like, okay, I'm going to go watch like the Christopher Lee Hammer movie. I think he mentioned that in one of the intros to Salem's Lot. It's like, that's what he grew up on. It's like these kind of like B-rate cheesy horror movies that came out in the 50s and 60s,
which is why they're always mentioned in like every book.
Yeah, and I mean,
every book makes some reference to one of those cheesy horror movies.
To those things, because that's the kind of stuff that he watches. And I think that he's like one of those dudes that like he just watches these kind of things, and that's not a bad thing. And I also think that, so what that comes down to in a lot of ways is Stephen King's probably a lot of like very similar to me, in that I've said multiple times that I'm a movie fan, but I'm not very critical of movies. A lot of times I give movies a lot more credit maybe than they even deserve, just because I enjoy movies so much.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Stephen King's the same way, where he's just a dude that's just like, if he's a dude that can go watch, like a Hammer film with Christopher Lee playing Dracula and Peter Cushing playing Van Helsing, kind of a cheesy-ish movie, if he's going to be able to go and enjoy that, he's not a dude that's sitting there going, oh, I must have the best kind of movies. It must be Citizen Kane. It has to be an Oscar movie. It has to be, he's just not going to be that guy. So for people, I almost wonder if like his fandom of movies is so broad that like, and obviously he doesn't care about them making changes to his stuff. So
yeah,
it's almost like people hold his adaptations to a higher standard than he ever will. You know what I mean? Because
he doesn't care.
He's just going to.
He's made it perfectly clear in this interview that he doesn't care.
But also, like movie wise, like even movies that we might think like, oh God, those weren't that good, but he might think, oh, that was a fun movie, because it's kind of in the same vein of stuff that he grew up watching since he was a child up until even as an adult he loves to go watch. So it's kind of interesting to that was just an epiphany I had. It's not even necessarily in the text of this article, but it's something I came to that maybe that's an explanation for you people that might be wondering, like, oh man, why does Stephen King always give his good reviews on all this stuff, even when it comes out and I'm not really a big fan of it, or it's not very critically acclaimed necessarily.
Like Dark Tower. Like, he had no problem with Dark Tower. He's like, it's good.
Yeah.
And then it comes out and everyone is up in arms about it and everything. I need you to correct me on something.
All right.
Because I swear I remember this, and this may just be Peter's memory putting things in here that aren't true. The It adaptation had an issue with the first director,
unfortunately,
who wanted to keep it, because at first I thought it was because he wanted to keep it rated R, but it ended up being rated R anyways.
Yeah, that was a
there was a rumor going around that during auditions, the parents of the child actors found out that the studio had or the director had plans to include that child's sex scene. No,
it's just one of those things that, like, there were, like, basically there was a huge article written about the whole falling out with Cary Fukunaga, which is the original director, and if you guys have seen True Detective season 1, he directed that.
Yeah,
and what a job he did. But basically, it sounds like Warner Brothers was always fighting him on, or Warner Brothers? I think that's who did it. They were fighting him on rated R. They didn't want to do rated R. He wanted to do 2 movies. They were fighting him on that. They wouldn't okay him for, just like they didn't okay Andy Muschietti for second movie. It was only like a week or 2 before the movie came out that they finally gave him a green light for the second It film. Like, they kept telling him, like, if it does good, we'll give you a sequel, but if not, you can go to hell. So they were fighting him on that. But also, basically, what he said in an interview is essentially that he wanted to make something like The Shining. He wanted something that was a little bit more artistic and basically something that would stand the test of time. He wanted to make a really great movie, and he felt that Warner Brothers just wanted your standard horror trope, like,
right,
and they didn't want to give him the money or the leeway to make the kind of movie that he wanted to make. And I really feel that I don't necessarily think that he's, like, deluded enough to compare himself to, like, a Kubrick, but I think what he was basically saying is, like, like, look at what they did with The Shining. Like, Stephen King may not like it, but, like, everyone loves that movie, and there's a reason for that. Like, he did things that were a little bit timely. He didn't do things that were stuck in the time. Like, what else is coming out when The Shining came out? Things like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Like,
yeah,
he didn't replicate what was going on at the time. Like, he made something that was so outside of that time period that it stands the test of time. And it sounds like what Fukunaga wanted to do was something like that, and Warner Brothers had no interest in a movie like that. They wanted something a little bit more like everything else, which is kind of that's kind of what we heard. Although now that I've seen the movie that Muschietti made, I can kind of see what they're talking about, but I think that they were able to succeed despite that because of Muschietti as a filmmaker.
Okay, I found the article that I read that made me it's quoting the original article that I read. This is an article that was written in September. What it was is it wasn't Cary Fukunaga is how you say it. It wasn't Cary Fukunaga who included the sex scene in the script. It was the original screenplay that he inherited when he took the part. So I don't know who wrote that, but in the original script there was the child sex scene included. So no, I was mistaken. It was not the reason that Cary Fukunaga left and everything like that.
Yeah, no, so mostly because there was a pretty big, and it was actually before this one had got a green light. So this is a while back.
Yeah,
there was almost just like a post-mortem on why did this, like, brilliant filmmaker leave this movie that might end up being a really great movie. And so, yeah, that was basically the long and short of it, is he wanted to do something a little bit more artistic and a little bit outside of the realm of what horror movies are today, nowadays. And again, I really feel that, like, in a lot of ways, I was really disappointed. I actually thought that it might end up being a bad movie. And I honest to God believe they almost succeeded despite Warner Brothers, just because of Muschietti being such a good filmmaker. Like his short film, Mama, like, guys, if you're a fan of horror at all, go on YouTube right now and watch it. Like, it's only a couple minutes long, the short film, not the full movie.
What is it?
It's Mama. And it's basically what put Muschietti on the map. And it's a short film. I think it's only if it's 5 minutes, it's barely 5 minutes if I remember correctly. And then eventually got to the point where they let him make a full movie off of that. And I think it did all right and stuff. But definitely, there's something about that short film that it just terrifies me. It's one of my favorite, actually, I'd say it's one of my favorite horror things that's been made in the last 20 years. So I feel that, like, he's such a good filmmaker that I think he was able to get past like the restrictions that Warner Brothers is putting on him to make a quote normal horror movie of the day, of what today's horror movies look like.
Yeah.
And he was able to make it into something that I think will stand the test of time. I think that this is something 20 years from now people will be able to watch this new It movie and enjoy, I think. So
absolutely.
But that's because of Machete though. And I think that's the restrictions that they were putting on Fukunaga, and he's a really hot property right now because of things like True Detective. But I think it was easier for him to just go, no, screw you guys. I don't have time to make the movie you guys want to make. I don't want to make it. I'm gonna go make something else.
Yeah, I'll go do what I want to do.
Yeah. So that's kind of the long and short of it, even though it is a little bit of a diversion, but it's all good. That's what Palavers are about.
But I wasn't wrong in the question that came up in the chat was the It adaptation, how they dealt with the orgy scene and everything like that, and how the new movie didn't even have it at all. Like didn't even come close to hinting at it or anything. And I just remember the parents being a father myself. I could understand why the parents would be mad about depicting your teenage kid being involved in that kind of scene.
Yeah.
So I just remember that, and I brought it up in the chat. And yeah, apparently I thought we talked about that before, but apparently we haven't.
No, and I don't even know that was even it, because there's been so many reworks that screenplay and stuff that I didn't know what was in it or what wasn't in it.
Yeah,
I do know that some of the stuff actually would have pissed off Stephen King fans. I do know that Fukunaga had actually changed up some people's names and stuff. I think Henry had a different name. Yeah, Bill had a different name.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be Bill.
I think I can't remember if they were calling him Will or something that was somewhat attached, or like whatever, like a little bit, or somewhat similar a little bit, but nothing. No, it didn't make a lot of sense, and like just weird things like that. And there was some stuff, because it sounds like Machete, when he came in, he changed the script up a little bit. And it sounds like a lot of the changes he made was to bring it back to the way things were in the book,
a lot closer to the source material,
true to the source material. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for clearing that up. I couldn't remember Fukunaga's reason for leaving.
Yeah, and then Josh is saying in the chat he didn't like Georgie's death scene. You'll have to let us know why. No, I'm going to go on with the interview here with Stephen King, but I would definitely be curious as to why the scene you didn't like, because I thought it was definitely a lot more true to the book, and it was definitely brutal. Maybe that's tough to watch here. I don't know. Is it that, or is it the special effects not doing it? I don't know. I'm just curious. All right, so now on with the Stephen King interview while he might answer that here. Well, there's
what the heck was that?
Someone driving by. Sorry about that,
Lord.
Guys. Then it goes on here. It says, this is a question. This is Kyle Buchanan again. He says, is there any common threads that you've been able to figure out when it comes to good adaptations of your works? And Steven says, I think that sometimes when people buy a book, they just want the situation, and then they'll build the movie off of it. It's like buying a launch pad, and you put your own rocket on it. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it explodes. A lot of the times I feel like the filmmakers are better off if they follow the arcs of my stories closely. Now, maybe that's egocentric, but that's the way I feel. With Gerald's Game in 1922, they both followed the course of the books pretty closely, and the films that these guys made stand and fall on that. That's an interesting one, and I would say that like that maybe even gets into like maybe that's even a slight allusion towards like The Shining, where like I feel like The Shining is definitely one that they were buying the platform, and Kubrick took that platform and did his own thing with it and launched his own rocket off of it.
It's interesting that Stephen King talks about in this interview that he didn't mind for the for most adaptations if they were good or bad or everything like that, but he did throw a stink about The Shining.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird. I think Chris alluded to that in the chat even a little bit earlier, and I don't know what that is about, other than the fact that I really feel that maybe The Shining is just a little bit more important to him because of the somewhat autobiographical nature of the fact that he and Jack Torrance share quite a bit.
Yeah, and the big thing was the big thing that Stephen King had a problem with was the change in Jack's character.
Yeah,
but Josh responded to you. I want you to read that in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, okay. So just didn't leave anything to the imagination.
He didn't like Georgie's death because it didn't leave anything to your imagination. He didn't like. I could see how it was necessary, referencing that his arm is ripped off, like in the book, and only way the audience could know it is by showing it, since Georgie is missing in the movies as opposed to the book. I definitely think the special effects took me out of it for a bit for me also.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it's one of those things like with horror, generally the thought process is, generally speaking, is that what you show, people can't imagine. You know what I mean? If you have someone that just walks off screen and like, they end up dying, and maybe you even have it to where like, what killer's involved, you kind of know what the killer usually does. The person's probably going to come up with, at least in their mind, what is the most horrifying possibility.
Right.
But once you show it, you remove that. You remove that
It's
element
true.
of imagination.
But the counter argument I would make is that in this day and age in TV, especially TV and film, is if you don't show it, there's always that question: well, did it really happen? You know, maybe he's just keeping Georgie in the sewer and everything
especially
like that.
especially if you're watching something like Game of Thrones, where everyone
No,
wants to
and
believe
it's-
that
and
everyone's
it's-
alive still.
And you're not going to have everyone who's read the book like us that's like, okay, this is where Georgie dies. Yep, there he goes. Okay, he's pulled into the sewer. Yep,
Yeah.
now he's dead.
I would say that would probably actually be hitting in the nail on the head. I think that especially because like you add that whole element to where, because I don't remember that being in the book too much, where Bill just didn't believe that he was dead or not. That just
No, it didn't happen because Georgie's body didn't get taken. They had a body. He was dead. A neighbor brought him home.
That's right.
So they
that's right.
buried him.
That's
So
right.
that's why Bill didn't know,
Okay, 'cause
didn't
it's-
realize he was.
so
yeah.
I think what that comes down to most likely then is you have to show that kill, because with the main character that you're mostly seeing the story through, with him denying it, you're opening the audience up to actually potentially believing that he isn't dead.
Right, exactly, and that's why they didn't have the
So-
body brought back to the family so they could bury it. You know, the dad's reaction in the garage and everything like that. You know he's dead, Bill. You know he's gone. He's dead. You know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. You have that scene, which was, I felt that was a really powerful scene that was not in the books because there was no option.
You
for
didn't
that.
need that. Yeah.
What you had in the books instead was the a spoiler alert for the books, guys. Sorry, we've been spoiling a lot of it recently. Is the coldness. He felt like he wasn't a part of the family. There was no family. The parents
Yeah.
were just cold. They were basically shell shocked, is what it seemed like.
Yeah.
They couldn't. They did what they did, what they had to do out of necessity and out of like, you know, almost like instinct. You know, go to work, come home, make dinner, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Something needs fixing. Let me go get my tools from the garage. I'll fix it. Okay, now let's go back and watch some TV.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. But it wasn't the parents that they had before Georgie's death. They were different. They were different people, and that was what he dealt with. Instead, they changed it to where he's dealing with, he's in denial, and his parents want him to accept it.
Yeah, but I would say that like maybe just to put an exclamation point on it, I think that showing the death is important because you don't want to confuse audiences. Like because if audiences start to get their hopes up along with Bill that Georgie might be alive, that's kind of a dark place to let the people go down to believe that with him. So for us as an audience to see it, even though they don't as the people in the movie, we know that Richie's right. Like when they get in that fight with Richie and Bill, we know that Richie's right. We know that they're all right. Except for Bill, like he is dead. Like get over it. Like he like quit trying this imagination that he's still alive. Because I guess because I get into the whole thing of like you just watched Usual Suspects recently, is like if you have certain movies that like to subvert expectations by giving you a narrator, but they give you a narrator that's not one that you can necessarily trust. Fight Club's the same way. You got movies like that, and it's not necessarily that you'd be doing that, but at the same time, if we don't see it, if they just played it off like the original miniseries and don't show anything other than the fact of like Pennywise grabbing for him. Once Bill is arguing so much throughout the movie that he's not dead or whatever, or alluding to it, the audience might start buying into that. That would probably be a bad thing because now you've kind of got your audiences off on the wrong path,
Right.
So maybe that, but it also might just even be Machete wanted to go, hey, we're rated R, we're in the movie. Let's put an exclamation point on at the very beginning of the movie. This is not. This isn't your dad's It movie. This is new.
And one of the things also is that scene was disturbing, even for me, who knew that Georgie was gonna die. Like I knew he was gonna die and everything like that. That scene still disturbed me, and I think that's kind of what he went for. Is that kind of like you're talking about? It's like that right hook that you come out of the. Okay, we had our first round. Now let's go to the second round. Let's come out swinging.
Yeah.
Okay, these book readers are not going to be expecting that. Let's go hit him in the jaw.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He shocked a bunch of us. Say Chris is leaving.
Oh, Chris, thanks for joining us, Chris. It was good to have you for sure. We still got to have you on at some point to talk about your timeline. We haven't forgot about you at all. We're definitely still trying to get out from the wake of the movie for sure, but we'll definitely get to it for sure. So good to have you with us, Chris, for sure, for the live chat here. Yeah, and then Josh says my favorite scene in It was when Pennywise came out of the fridge in the house on Neibolt. Yeah, that was definitely a good one. We saw a bit of that in the trailer. I remember we were just at work.
I remember when we were
like,
watching
there's
that.
No way.
I remember when we were watching that the second trailer and everything like that, and you're like, "Holy crap! He's coming out of a fridge and he's upside down." I was like, "What?" We rewound it on YouTube and looked at it. And, yeah, going frame by frame, you could see like his body is just so contorted, so evilly that it's just
Yeah,
it's so unsettling.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely good. That was definitely a great movie though. So now the last question for Mr. King here.
Sorry, we keep getting sidetracked from that.
I guess we're Dark Tower at the side of it for this podcast.
It is.
But it's all good. Hopefully the all the listeners can forgive us and
cry our pardon.
Hopefully go along with it. And, hey, it's just Dandelo's cousin. That's all we're doing here.
It's just like we were told. It's a different level of the tower.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a question from Kyle, and he says, "You're now on the other side of the Dark Tower, a movie that was so long in the making, but it didn't completely work. What was the challenge there?" So this is definitely an interesting take. And he goes on. Stephen King answers and says the major challenge was to do a film based on a series of books that's really long, about 3,000 pages. The other part of it was the decision to do a PG-13 feature adaptation of the books that are extremely violent and deal with violent behaviors in a fairly graphic way. He has a little bit more to his answer here, but I wanted to stop on that because that's interesting because we had mostly kind of brushed aside the idea that PG-13 was that much of a concern, but that's very interesting to hear the author kind of give us as that one of the core elements of the books is extreme violence and how to and dealing with violent behavior in a fairly graphic way. And I'd never really considered that. I mean, of course, we know that the Dark Tower is violent and
wait, what it is?
But and graphically violent. But it's one of those things I never really considered the fact that was like a core element of the story. I mean, I knew it was there.
It's brutal,
but I almost think that I almost just always wrote it off as like, oh, that's just Stephen King. But it's interesting that are we in a place, or is that like him almost saying that like that was almost one of the things he was trying to get at with the stories, you know what I mean, is like this graphic violence, and like maybe that's why you're inserting people from our world into this world of extreme violence. You know what I mean? Like you always get movies like like Mad Max or things where you have these post-apocalyptic, but like to take people from our world and put them into that. Now suddenly you're allowing like this shock of like, whoa, dude, like this is the world. Like, good Lord,
how do you deal with this?
Yeah, because I think audiences have a tendency to just like roll with what's going. You know, like you're watching Mad Max. Oh, okay, cool. This is the world as it is, and like you kind of lose a little bit of the shock because you're just like, oh, that's just the world. Like rather than like judging it and going, oh my God, I couldn't imagine. You're just like, okay, cool. This is a different world. But then when you put someone from our world into it, it's suddenly,
now all of a sudden you have a representation of yourself.
Where you're having to deal with it the same way that you would deal with it if you were there, versus just like keeping yourself outside of it. So
much like Planet of the Apes kind of thing.
Yeah.
If they had just done a movie about Planet of the Apes with monkeys, okay. But when you take someone from our generation and put them there, thinking that it's a different planet and everything like that.
Yeah.
Then you have oh man, that would be crazy if that happened to me.
Yeah.
That's where you get that.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you could have had that whole movie without Charlton Heston at all, but that would have been a severely different movie. Just because like it would just be like kind of a weird thing, and like maybe you even still had that last shot of like panning out and stuff, and it would still be like the same effects, but it would be, dude, that'd be a whole different movie because
it would.
Because you would just be sitting there going, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, and at the end you'd be like, oh wow, but
what a twist!
It just wouldn't have the same oomph to it. So yeah, that's an interesting take from King, and kind of gives you a new way to look at things with the Dark Tower books for sure. And then he goes on and says that was something that had to be overcome. Although I've got to say, I thought screenwriter Akiva Goldsman did a terrific job in taking the central parts of the books and turning it into what I thought was a pretty good movie. The TV series they're developing now, we'll see what happens with that. It would be like a complete reboot, so we'll just have to see. So that's kind of interesting.
A reboot, huh?
Yeah, I mean that's what he's saying.
All right.
I mean, again, I would caution people against overreacting too much to that, because this could just be Stephen King talking off the cuff. Like, I don't know if necessarily they've come to the conclusion that it will be a reboot and they've told King that and now he's saying this, or if it's just one of those things that he's just assuming that because TV and movie are a different thing that you'd have to kind of do a reboot in ways. But that is something he definitely said is that their development now, we'll see what happens. It would be like a complete reboot, so we'll just have to see. So that's the last bit from Stevie there, and just kind of an interesting to hear his take on the Dark Tower. And again, he thought it was a good movie, I guess, same way that we did, I guess. And
yeah,
again, like I said earlier with my epiphany, maybe it's just because he's more of a fan of movies that doesn't care much about grades. He's more just like, just give me a movie.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
Lydia is all for a reboot.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people are. I think that,
and Jim too.
I think that like my only, and I would accept it, assuming the fact that Idris Elba probably doesn't want to get back into television. but I just feel that Idris is just so awesome that I would just love to see it continue with him. But yeah, like ultimately, if he doesn't want to be involved, I would say then yeah, just go reboot and
get someone that can dedicate.
Yeah, cast some people
to the series. Sorry, not that Idris didn't dedicate, just to the series.
But yeah, he's been a dude that's been in television for a decade or so now, and I would totally see, especially as he started to get into the Hollywood realm a lot bigger, I could totally see him not wanting to take a step back and go into it versus someone like Matthew McConaughey to go do True Detective, which is a very small 8-episode thing. It was probably the equivalent of filming a movie and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But he was already established by that point. Idris is still in that weird precarious position where he's still not really on the map in a lot of ways. I'd say there's still a lot of people in the country that don't know who Idris Elba is. Like if they saw a picture, they'd be, oh yeah, I saw him in Prometheus, or oh, I saw him in Pacific Rim. But they're not going to be people, they're like, oh, Idris Elba. Oh yeah, dude, the guy from The Wire, from Pacific Rim, he doesn't have that name recognition. So for him, I think it'd be a step back to go and do a big TV thing. Not saying he won't do it. But I could see why he would just say, no, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens though. All right. And then actually funny the conversation went this way because the last article we have here actually is titled Idris Elba. And then this is colon as though this is what he's saying. There are definitely talks for the Dark Tower movie sequel. That's what, that's the headline of this one. And this is by Eleanor Blay Griffiths. From Radio Times, and this was on October 6, 2017. So this is pretty much getting us up pretty much concurrent with what news has been going on.
I'm so happy. That makes me so happy.
What?
That there's talks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have to hear any more. I'm already happy. That makes me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, and then Josh in the chat, I just saw him in The Office. Yeah, and he did The Office a while back, and I think that was part of his because he basically kind of got on the map in the early 2000s with The Wire, Luther over in England, which I think he's still doing episodes of that, but those are it's English TV, so there's 5 episodes a season, and the seasons might be 3 or 4 years apart, so that one doesn't really count. But yeah, then he did The Office, and he's done a lot of TV here and there, but I just feel like he might be moved beyond that. I don't know that, say The Office was a new show airing now, I don't know if they get Idris Elba in that role, even though it was a small limited role. It was bigger. It was a bigger role than Will Ferrell for sure. Yeah. It was a full season arc.
He was there,
but I just don't know that you'd get Idris Elba today to go do The Office if The Office is happening on because of where he's at. He's a dude that's trying to break through to bigger things. I think to being a movie star in a lot of ways. Let's go on to the headlines from this. And this is actually my last article too. And it starts off here. It says, despite those awful reviews, many Stephen King fans were more positive, and the movie still made more than $110 million at the box office. Now, could we actually be about to see a sequel? So she obviously started the article talking about bad reviews and everything else, whatever. But then she transitioned and said it did make $110 million at box office. So could we be seeing a sequel? Then she goes on and says a TV version of The Dark Tower has already been announced as producers hope to create a cross-platform cinematic and TV universe drawing on King's 8-part book series. Sure, details are still hazy at this point. It's not clear if Elba will star in the small screen version or if it's more of a prequel. But that may not be all. And then we get a quote here, and this is Elba talking to the Radio Times. So this is an interview that they had apparently with him. And I'm guessing that the screenshot they had was a red carpet thing. So I don't know if this is a red carpet for the Mountain Between Us or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The Idris and Cate Blanchett movie. And this is the quote from Idris. It says, I think any TV series that is an offshoot from the film could have more time to explore some themes, Elba tells RadioTimes.com. And then he goes on and says, I'd personally prefer to do another Dark Tower film exploring more of the gunslinger as a film. And that's very interesting that, this says definitely talks, but this is definitely him saying that he wants to do more and he wants to do them as films. So
that's so awesome.
That's interesting. Yeah, and it's awesome. Definitely awesome to see. And then the last little bit here says, and apparently there's a realistic prospect of this happening. And then this a quote here to close out this article. He says, I don't know much about where they are with the TV show, but I think there's definitely talks to try to do another one. And obviously not saying it, but another one being film. So, so there is definitely talks. And TV series still seems to be because we haven't heard a lot about it since they announced it right before the movie. So it's kind of interesting to hear Stephen King and Idris Elba saying that the TV is still in development.
Yeah. And
for Idris to say there is talks and that he definitely wants to be Roland on the big screen.
I really hope we get more.
Yeah. So that's the end of this article. And actually, we're hitting right about the normal time that we would be shutting down. So I think we might actually have a very rare thing where we, with all the news that we've had caught up, that we might have a roundtable here without any emails.
Oh man, it's been a while.
So, but that's all right, because I think what's going to happen is I think probably one of our next episodes is probably, because I think where are we at? We're early in October, so we still have one more episode before we're looking at the movie release. So what we'll probably do is have another roundtable next time and probably hit emails a little bit more, because there's still some great emails to do. We still have some people responding to the movie, which is kind of funny because with the fast turnaround of it onto DVD within only a few months, man.
Yeah.
Beginning of October.
You called it though.
Yeah, but I thought it would be closer to Christmas though, not Halloween. Like that's a huge difference. Like you're talking August 4th to October 31st. Like that's a short turnaround.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the shortest I've ever seen. So we still have some people responding to the movie that we'll talk about. I definitely want to read those because, some of these guys are international, guys and girls are international, and I definitely still want to hear what you guys have to say. And we also have some other people that have found us through the movie or whatever else that have some intro emails. So there's some really cool emails. And I can't wait to hear. I actually did not foresee this all these news things taking up this much time. But yeah,
we also got sidetracked with some 8 questions.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so that I think we'll probably close up shop here and like I said, come back and do some emails next time around. Some heavy email episode.
All right.
So let's go ahead and close up shop. Say, first off, if you guys want to subscribe to us, you can do that on iTunes. If you want to stream us, you can do that on Stitcher. If you could also rate and review us on iTunes, we would definitely love you for that. Also, you can find our show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. Go on to that, especially, I usually get the show notes post about the time that I post the podcast, which is usually by late Tuesday night, so early Wednesday morning it'll be posted. Usually show notes will be there then. Go there and check out those notes and read the rest of that Stephen King interview, guys, because if you guys are Dark Tower fans, I assume you like Stephen King, and I'm assuming you'll really love some of the stuff he talks about with Gerald's Game and some other stuff, so check that stuff out. And also, if you guys want to join us for the Palaver, Peter can tell you the best way for that to happen.
Best way to reach us is through email. Sorry, we didn't get any to this today. darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. You can also follow us on Twitter, which is @darktowerpod. That again is @darktowerpod. And if you want to watch and listen live, you can do that on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. You can also check out our shows later on if you wanted to see what Tad's showing me, news article headlines, or if there's any pictures or anything like that, you can check it out on the YouTube.
Indeed. So yeah, guys, thanks for joining us for this episode, number 46 of Dark Tower Palaver Roundtables. Next time we'll be back for number 47. We'll get into whatever news happens between now and then, and we'll hit up some emails and see what everyone thought of the movies that hasn't chimed in yet, and also get some intros from people. And then most likely the next episode after that will probably be our commentary episode. Yeah, that'll be really fun. I'm looking forward to watching the movie as a Ka-Tet.
It will be fun.
That'll be fun. So I guess even for emails, I don't know how we would do emails in the commentary. That would probably not necessarily be in a commentary episode as much as probably just we would read them after the fact and whatever. But because I couldn't imagine trying to stop or look away from the movie to read emails at the same. So that probably won't happen. But be ready for that in 2 episodes from now. But until then, as we always
one last question from the chat.
Let's no. Next week we'll do another. We are going to keep book clubs fairly regular. But no, next time we'll do a round table to catch up on some news and a lot of the emails that we have, and then we'll do the commentary then, and then book club, and then probably a book club for the second one of November. That's probably what we're looking at for a schedule. We. Sometimes we may sound like we really have this all planned out, but sometimes we're flying by the skin of our pants, and we're just barely the
skin of our pants.
Yeah, why not?
It's the seat of our pants, Tad. Come on.
Or skin of our nose, too.
Skin of your nose. There you go. Don't mix and match these, man.
It's like a rocket surgery. Or brain science.
Get out of here, Tad.
But yeah, no, there's times that we do have some stuff a little bit more planned out, but there's other times that things develop during the show.
That's right.
So, So until then, until next time, a couple weeks from now, we say to you guys, long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
And everyone in the chat, thanks for joining us. It's been fun. You guys definitely made it a pretty fun conversation. I think I will say blame a lot of you guys on the it conversations. Not that it was a bad thing, but it was cool.
It's your fault. It wasn't us.
No, it was fun though. I love it. I would love nothing more than to expand into some of the stuff more. But yeah, I do think like, oh, we are a Dark Tower podcast. But yeah, it's always fun when something, especially like it. I mean, it's as big as it's been, man. This is like a cultural touch point. So it's definitely fun to talk about it with you guys. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for chatting us up. And hopefully you guys had fun and join us next time. Next time we'll try to give you more of an advance notice again. This is kind of a one-time thing where we couldn't we literally had no idea. I was thinking about it the night before. I'm like, I should tweet something out, but I'm like, dude, I have literally no idea when we're going to get back. So I don't really want to tweet anything out.
We really should have just said, hey, we're recording tomorrow. Stay tuned for times.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do that next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. So see you next time, and have a great couple weeks.
See you guys.
See ya.